Hi guys, my name is Martin Curry from BeliefMedia. Welcome to our inaugural podcast titled Hello World. Hi guys, Martin Curry from Belief. Once again, I'm here with my business partner, Domenico Bordil. How are you, Dom?
Fantastic, thank you.
Excellent. The purpose of our inaugural podcast, and we shouldn't be calling it our inaugural podcast because we've done hundreds, maybe thousands before. But certainly, we've now relaunched our service essentially. So the purpose of this podcast is to introduce us. Many people wouldn't be familiar with who we are, what we do, and introduce our suite of marketing and social media products, and certainly our digital marketing and social media platform, particularly to the finance market, which is where we spend the majority of our time.
And with real estate too on the side there.
Yeah, it applies. It's a social media and digital marketing system that applies primarily to finance brokers, financial advisors, accountants, and real estate agents. It's an area where we have significant experience. We'll come to explain why we've been working in the digital space since 1997, 23 years now. I set up my first brokerage in 2005, and we're both brokers, or at least I was a qualified broker, not anymore. We're both real estate agents. But it's the foundation upon digital marketing that has made our product and certainly our service an ongoing success for so many years. Now, it is probably important for people to understand what our product is first and foremost. But look, I guess in essence, and I'll just describe it as best I can in one sentence or less, and that is it is a suite of digital products that will essentially and fundamentally change businesses. It introduces a number of modules and services that completes any number of social media and marketing functions, from posting to social media, creating and managing landing pages at the click of a button. The same with Facebook ads. It manages telecommunications networks, that's inbound phone numbers and so on. It connects that to the marketing experience. It is the only, with only underlined, full stack, fully integrated and fully compliant digital marketing system available in the finance space. And it was also, without question, the easiest to use, and we'll come to explain why and how that is managed.
And of course, there's all the email marketing part that goes with that too, without saying.
Yeah, email marketing and enterprise level email marketing suite. I think there's about 120 modules of all up. About 100 which people will never touch, but once again, that is something we'll have to come to explain because there is just so much to it, and we don't want people to get bogged down in the complexities of it. It is a very extensive suite of products. The idea is that if you need access to a certain type of product or a certain type of service, the marketing suite will hopefully provide that to businesses. We don't want them going out and sourcing these ridiculous third-party products and then trying to stitch them together with Zapier or something silly in order to make it work.
And as you start using the product, just by looking around the menus, you'll start getting ideas of what other functions you could possibly apply to the business. So that will prompt you to ask questions and look at a B-loan module, so you can actually learn more about it within the system. So it helps you actually develop your understanding of marketing and pull it up into a very advanced level. That's right.
So I guess the first thing that is worth doing, by the way, we've got a digital marketing guide. At the time of recording this, it's about 555 pages. If you're watching this on YouTube or Wistia or listening to it in any number of locations, there's probably a link or something down below or up above or something like that. Certainly if you're on our website, it should be about there. I don't know which side I'm sitting on the screen. That is confusing. So it should be down there somewhere. It provides... there's a lot of information on what our platform provides, obviously, but certainly it's designed for businesses whether they choose to engage in our product or our service or not. So there are techniques in here that no one has ever heard of before,
and some non-disclosure techniques there that you've exposed to.
Previously,
the NDA ones, yeah.
Previously, a number of our modules were protected by an NDA, and that was to ensure that our brokers, those brokers that worked with us through our growth program, which was our former growth program, which we ceased in about November or December last year primarily, We have rebranded it, and we don't advertise our growth program now. It's rebranded as Mastermind, and it's for exclusive groups of brokers, and we do guarantee $100 million a year by virtue of someone's involvement with that system. But it's not for everybody, and maybe that's something I'll talk about really, really briefly. Not now, because it's a little off topic. But there is a digital marketing guide, and it introduces a large number of techniques and practices that can be employed right now in any business, with or without us. And even just the information itself is largely unknown to the industry. So it'll introduce a measure of success that will add copious amounts of volume to your bottom line. And that is digital practices and relationship-based systems as well. And like you said, we did have an NDA that protected a large number of our systems, and we've now just disclosed the majority of them. Obviously, there's a lot of proprietary knowledge that we protect for our mastermind group, but certainly Saturn, which routinely delivers about $400 million a year for our aggregated brokers, for all our brokers that use the system. It returns over $400 million a year, which is a lot of volume, and it's more effective than Facebook marketing and so on. Having said that, we still provide the industry's leading digital marketing experience when it comes to that Facebook experience. Again, something we'll come to maybe talk about later on. So, look, first point of call, our origins. We've been doing this since 1997, and you mentioned the other day that you remembered where we were sitting, where we were when we originally conceptualised the business.
Yeah, I remember wandering over. It was the front room of your house at the time, right at the front street level. And we sat there and we started talking about internet and the domain names, which is what we were discussing. We actually went on a buying spree, both of us separately. And then we combined together and started to put together some marketing and material for people, because we started getting people curious when they found out we were talking about domain names. They were trying to conceptualise, what are you guys talking about? How's the internet help? Isn't it just a business card?
Well, it was at a time when the internet was very new. There were people at that point in time that didn't know what an email address was, and certainly had no understanding of what a website was. If people wanted to get online, usually it was via a 28K modem. And,
that's right.
And then, it wasn't long after, in the late 90s, I guess, the 56K modems were made available, and maybe by 2001 or so, low-speed ADSL was available. So it was this really emerging technology, which looking back on things, and we were formative in that space. We set up one of the first digital marketing agencies in Australia when digital marketing was not a thing. And it's one of the things we describe in the book, and one of the things I'll come to talk about in just like 1 or 2 minutes from now. And that is those concepts that we developed back in 1997 are still being used today, which is part of the problem with modern day marketing, and that is it's generic and it hasn't evolved. The systems, I say that again, the systems we developed in 97 are used almost, it's a carbon copy of what we were using back then. The technologies were different, but the principles remain virtually the same. The terms to describe certain actions and types of pages and so on have all changed, but fundamentally the principles remain identical. So yeah, that was a long time ago. 97, we worked with a whole array of really big businesses. We dealt with enterprise level stuff. Later on, we developed primarily, or you actually did most of the development in Cold Fusion. I sort of leaned towards PHP at a time when it was in its infancy. Once again, it hadn't developed into the object language that...
And Perl you're using a fair bit too.
I used Perl. In 1997, we used Perl for everything. And up until 1998, I think, we used Perl for virtually everything, which is a programming language a little bit like C. It was server-side, and it was probably a little bit complex for... The development environment has obviously been improved. It's much easier to develop for the web today than it was back then. HTML has improved immensely. And back in the day, no one knew what CSS was. Style sheets and so on. Everyone was just developing in tables. Do you remember that? Everything was
Everything was a
developed in
table,
tables.
yeah, and trying to position things and get it pixel perfect was
Our biggest concern
yeah.
was compatibility back then between Internet Explorer and Netscape. There was no consideration whatsoever to screen size, mobile responsiveness, or anything else. SEO was fundamentally different, and so on. So that was a different time. It was an interesting time.
And the banner ads.
Banner ads used to convert at roughly 30%, even higher sometimes. If you put a banner ad on a website, you knew it was going to convert. And following on from that experience, when I described the whole experience before, we'll talk about it shortly, but banner ads usually led to a page. Back then, it was very much you'd send someone to a splash page, which was a horrible type of page. We never used them. We only ever used landing pages. Back then, we used 2-column landing pages. Even back then, that approach hasn't changed much in 23 years. What happens in the background has, but the form and lead magnet experience essentially hasn't changed. And for email marketing, we're talking about this morning on the telephone. The first email marketing system we ever used, which I wrote in Perl, used to write email contacts to a text file. That was the primary method of maintaining a list of people, and it later evolved with the popularization of MySQL and the introduction of other open source tools. We obviously built on that, but in the early days, boy, it was a struggle, wasn't it?
Text files, yeah.
Yeah, I know. And the funny thing is, back then we were so knucklehead silly that they were essentially kept in public web directories. We didn't have the same problems that we do today. Security vulnerabilities weren't a problem back then like they are today.
Oh, but even if you look at security, it's only been the last 5-6 years that's tightened up. Until they really brought in the HTTPS, the encrypted web pages, things were easily bypassed.
Yeah, lots of middleman attacks. Although we're saying that in different ways now. There are a lot of people in the broking space, for example, that use free SMS gateways. And I try to explain to people that the reason they're free is because they're usually owned and managed by offshore actors, usually associated with people in India and China and places like that. And they're a middleman attack to scrape credit card numbers and other types of details. So in providing that detail, in providing that service, they're allowing people to voluntarily send through a system that is managed and provided for the purpose of nefarious and criminal activity. Like it's just nuts. The stuff that we're seeing people do today is out of control. And on that, we obviously use Telstra. It's the only fully compliant and bulletproof service available in Australia. You would and should never ever use an offshore SMS gateway.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later, yeah.
Talk more about that later. So we sold Australian Web Exposure in 2001 in the boom of the .com after building some amazing applications, working with some really big companies. We started Y Proprietary Limited, which is the letter Y, which we've managed ever since then as a consulting business. And obviously both of us have gone on to do lots of different things. You had previously worked with Westpac Financial Services developing software. That was before AWE, wasn't it?
Yes, and that was looking after the financial advisors, both in the software development part of it and also the actual support through the hardware they were using, laptops.
I think it's fascinating that you've gone full circle.
Yeah, I started there, went off into PeopleSoft and Oracle and was there for 20 years, managing thousands of databases and servers around the world, and then back into the finance industry again.
Yeah. So, look, I reckon it's worth having a podcast exclusively on your experience with Oracle, because they're obviously a very big company, and you were an international director. So there are lots of little stories there that people might be interested in. Certainly, I am, because we've never really talked about it, have we?
No, because you went off and actually you started up one of the largest mortgage businesses, and then you also were flying. Police, you had numerous things.
I did numerous things.
Yeah.
I sound like a bit of an airhead actually when I go through it, because it was when we sold AWE, I was so lost. I didn't know what I was going to do, right? So I took a job. Actually, the first thing I did is I went off to Noumea and set up an air ambulance service there. I was contracted to build an air ambulance service and train there. It was French Caledonian staff and all sorts of stuff. And I was there for months. And while I was there, like I said, I wanted to come home. I didn't want to spend my time. A lot of people, in hindsight, I was silly to want to come home. I should have stayed there for as long as I possibly could because it was a lot of fun. But I was keen to get home. So while I was there, I sent an application off to the police force. And just because it was something I always wanted to do, because I was flying helicopters as well. I'd been teaching people to fly since I was 19 years old. So I'd always had a hand in aviation. I'd always been part of that, even through AWE and Y and everything else. I was always doing that. So one of the companies I migrated to at the time, a little bit before Australian Web Exposure maybe, was a company that operated these 21-seat and 18-seat sort of turbine jet aircraft. And I ended up as their chief pilot. And that was an amazing job. I flew all over the world in these things. They were unpressurized aircraft, which was a very distinctive feature because everything would be low and slow. They were very slow airplanes. They weren't designed to be long haul in any respect. I think their endurance, even at the best of times, was about 5 hours. You'd throw passengers into them and you'd get 3 hours out of them, which was enough to take you to sort of regional centres. You could never get very far. So flying those things around the world was fascinating. In fact, in 2001, I think probably in the months after the sale of Australian Web Exposure, it was September 2001, I flew in the London Sydney Airways as flew a support aircraft and flew this thing solo to London and back through. So that was the very first thing I did, and then came back and went off to Noumea. And from there I went to the police force expecting to end up into the air wing. The company I'd worked with previously as a chief pilot, we had a Jet Ranger helicopter and an R-44 and stuff. So I love flying helicopters and always expected to migrate to the police air wing. But before I'd had a chance to do that, I went off and flew with the Royal Flying Doctor Service. Where did I go from there? The RFDS. And then I went and flew corporate aircraft, corporate jets, flying politicians and stuff around out of Canberra. I'd worked with a couple of other intelligence agencies by then. I then went off to Virgin Australia, flew the Boeing 777 internationally for a few years, and then migrated onto the 737 fleet where I flew domestically, and then ended up, by the time I left Virgin, I was on a 737 international fleet, which kind of did New Zealand's and Fiji's and Bali's and stuff like that. See, I've been around the block.
And the world.
Yeah, and the world. So, the finance company I set up, you mentioned that was in 2004 as iChoice. Obviously set it up as a sole director, and we didn't do much with it. It wasn't because I was obviously doing all these other things. That was I set that up in the time I was a police officer. I was working as a detective at the time, and it wasn't until I left Virgin, maybe 2015, I went to iChoice, pushed it really, really hard for about 12 months. The following year, it was the most successful independent brokerage in Australia. We'd worked, even as a part-time thing, and volumes were still high, probably 50, 60, 100 million, I don't know, I don't really remember. But certainly it was very easy to push those volumes. And that was with a very small number of brokers. Again, what made that business very unique, there were two things really. One of them was it was a relationship-based business. Despite our background and our expertise in technology and digital marketing, we didn't really apply digital marketing to that business. It was very much a relationship-based business. I was still working with other brokerages, supporting them. So there was a slight conflict of interest there. So, which is why I started BeliefMedia. I left iChoice, and the very first thing I did was to test the systems that I'd developed, the very new systems that I'd developed. I'd been using for 8 years because BeliefMedia was started in maybe I couldn't remember the year, but it was a number of years. I started BeliefMedia, built these systems. I hadn't really applied them in any significant way to the broking industry. Took them to a guy in Queensland, and we did $340 million in 3 months. I introduced certain contacts within the aviation world that I had, and we pushed this thing very, very, very hard. It changed his world. It didn't change my world because I introduced it to him at a fixed fee. But at least I knew the systems work, and then I started working with mortgage brokers exclusively through Belief in about 2015-16. We haven't looked back. We have consistently provided the leading digital marketing experience to the finance industry. No question about it, right? There are a lot of products out there in the marketplace. The thing is, at this point in time, we're backed by 23 years' experience in digital. Right, we've helped hundreds, maybe thousands of businesses, certainly hundreds and thousands, or not and thousands, but hundreds or thousands of brokers in Australia, certainly thousands internationally or all over the world. We know, black and white, clear as crystal, that our digital marketing systems are the most extensive, powerful, and they return more than any other when compared to any competing product. And we make mention of that. Our tone in this manual, and if you download it and read it, you'll appreciate it's very critical of these competing products in the market. And again, that comes from, we're seeing those products we introduced in 1997, those concepts we developed in 1997. I don't think we can take credit for them.
Yeah.
Well, they existed. Certainly, we base this on known consumer behaviour, on known psychology, and we pulled out old adverts and just migrated the marketing experience, the traditional sales experience, into a digital environment. Other people were doing that. We copied a lot of ideas back then, but we were formative, certainly in this country, in developing certain types of things. And I believe that we were certainly one of the first to introduce that whole landing page concept. But the problem is it still exists today, that same pattern, that same behaviour, that same transactional experience.
Format, yeah.
And the problem is that people are attracted to digital marketing and they think they're in a position to promote it, but they don't understand it. In this book, I had to introduce a chapter this morning to this book. It was 5 pages where I had to talk about why we're so critical, because I hear ourselves when I go through and listen to these podcasts after we've recorded them, and certainly when I read through the book, I hear our tone, I see our tone. And people have to understand that is because we are utterly frustrated with the digital marketing experience that is being provided to the industry. An absolute carbon copy, worst practice experience. It is horrendously bad, and people are paying between $5,000 and $15,000 for it. And the product we give away for free, aptly named Uranus, and we will come to describe our naming convention again later. A lot of our products are named after planets, and Uranus was an appropriate name for our free product. But our free product is more powerful than all of those products provided to the finance community. Our product is more powerful than all of those. Right, in one case, I mentioned the other day in a recording that we inherited a guy that was provided one of these carbon copy generic, bullshit products and multiplies results by 37 times. And I said at the time to you, that is not a reflection on us, because there are agencies in Australia that we compete with, genuinely compete with. But it's more a reflection on the individual that provided him with that. He didn't know and does not know what he's doing. Yeah, so that mastery product is just flawed, absolutely flawed. Yet brokers gravitate towards it because they don't know any different, and they're sold on a webinar. And that's the problem with digital marketing these days. It's predicated upon hype and BS and lies. And the chapter I introduced into our book this morning, and again, it's kind of to justify the tone that is used. We both wrote that, and our tone is very similar it's a shared tone between the two of us. And this chapter talks about Dunning-Kruger bias, which is a psychological condition where one's subjective opinion of themselves, or at least the work that they're doing, isn't matched by objective reality. And it's a really nice way of explaining what we've seen in the digital industry, and that is it is populated and polluted by inept behaviour. But unfortunately, these guys that promote these products, which we'll talk about, later, don't understand how bad they are because they don't have the experience that we do.
Well, they've been taught, that's what they've been taught, so they've taken what they've learned and they've gone out and set up a business and applying those same principles the way they understand them.
Yeah. I guess, it's a big topic. It's one, the story I give in the book, when I wrote this chapter this morning, it's just 5 pages, but I had to talk about it because, like I said, I went back through the book when I was pushing it into a PDF and kind of identified with this underlying tone, and I had to write this. But when I was a flying instructor, I was doing my instructor training, I was presented with briefing notes by my instructor. They would date stamp from like 1963 or something with this Royal Aero Club emblem on every page. The Royal Aero Club at that point hadn't existed for years and years. They went broke a long time before that. And this was the 90s. So I went out and decided, in the day and age when we used to do our student briefings on, what do they call them, those transparency things that you...
Overhead projectors.
Overhead projectors. And I did them on my transparent slides and redid everything as best I could and introduced a digital aspect to it. But in that day and age, we didn't have the facilities to present things in a very effective digital manner. We didn't have projectors and things like that in this facility anyhow that would support that. Certainly I had a website, very first flying instructor website in Australia. That's why I saw enormous success as a flying instructor. No one understood why, and I'd never tell them. It's because I was marketing online and knew how to do it and do it efficiently and stuff. The website itself turned into a magnificent resource. Anyway, I was presented with these notes and improved upon them and went through my instructor rating course, obviously went on to do a whole bunch of stuff in aviation. I never stopped teaching, even when I was flying, in Canberra, in WA, in wherever. I was always teaching. I'd always go back when I could. I'd always pick up 1 or 2 students here just to keep myself involved or immersed in the industry, or at least that level of the industry. And when I was at this company, I was the chief pilot. I took about 3 months annual leave. I had to because it had just accrued. My boss didn't want me around just accruing annual leave. So I went off and undertook, I think I took on 4 students. It might have been 5, but certainly 4 students for an instructor rating course at Camden Aviation at Camden. And the first week we had torrential rain. I sat down with them and we sat down in the classroom. They all presented their existing briefings. I came into their course about a week or so after they'd started, or maybe 2 weeks. So they all had their course notes prepared, and I sat down behind a desk and listened to their whiteboard briefings. And they were all the briefings that I had prepared 10, 11, 12 years earlier. And I thought, man, that's garbage. But it was, back when I created them, I thought they were amazing. I thought they were incredible. But the experience in reality, when I was sitting back now watching my notes, I don't know how they came across them or whatever else, but they kind of become the industry standard. Everyone was using my notes because they were the most modern notes available, which was horrible to see, your stuff being plagiarised and used by that. Not that I minded, because aviation's a very open source community where people share safety related information, and education is kind of an open source topic. No one's overly protective of their material that they produce. But after thousands of hours and years in the industry, I sort of sat back and said, that was really bad. What I prepared was really bad. And
it was appropriate for the level of experience at that point in time.
It was appropriate for that
level of
experience.
So what's changed is your experience has grown astronomically since that point.
Yeah, but it was recognition of the fact that I just remember how proud I was when I did this stuff. And then looking at it, they obviously developed, I continued to develop my notes and everything else. So after many years in the industry, my notes had gone from a 1 out of 10 through to what I perceived at that point with my current level of experience to be a 10 out of 10. You go another 10 years and you look back on it, you think it's kind of crap. And I actually had the same experience very early in my career when I was working at a flying school where I taught you to fly. And I taught you to fly at Chieftain. It wasn't Illawarra, was it? It was Chieftain. Yeah, it was a horrible little school.
Fantastic location.
Fantastic location. I don't even know if it exists anymore. If you know Sydney, it was on the corner of Henry Lawson Drive and Milperra Road. It was on the other side of Bankstown Airport, so it was the opposite. And then they built a service station there. I think they built like a Bunnings or something. So then you had this little freestanding building after it was abandoned. So after the school, long after I left, the school was abandoned, and that building just turned into garbage. It was falling apart. We were driving past one day, but I don't know if it's still there today. But literally on the other side of the airport. See, the thing is, around the airport there were probably 20 flying schools. Which was interesting from a marketing perspective because all your competition is located within a radius of 3.5 miles or so. It's a very interesting environment for promoting your product when everybody's product is essentially the same. It didn't matter if someone went next door and learnt to fly with Schofield's Flying Club or Aero Professional or Whitworth Aviation down the road. There were probably the 2 or 3 schools that were next to us. Everyone was getting kind of a comparable experience. However, there was one school on the airport called Sydney Aerobatics School, which was run by Noel Cruz, a veteran of the Royal Australian Air Force, very highly experienced combat pilot and flying instructor. And he introduced a very unique syllabus, which was very different to everybody else's. And he shared the attitude and the demeaning vernacular, perhaps, that we use in this booklet to describe the way other people operating. And the problem was, even back then, I said this to you this morning, I knew that their product was better. They had higher performing aeroplanes, bigger engines, they'd go faster, and they were capable of full aerobatics. So their students graduated knowing, loops and rolls and spins and hammerhead turns and all these sorts of fancy pants maneuvers when we couldn't provide that same level of tuition to our guys because we were operating in little Piper Tomahawks and Cessnas and things like that, which had limited capacity to perform things like spins. But their syllabus was better. And back then, I knew it. So I was still promoting my product as a flying instructor, knowing that their product was better.
And that's the way it should be taught. Because you were talking also this morning about the emergency procedures. What they taught from recoveries was a lot more thorough because of the way what the planes were capable of compared to what your planes were.
That's right. It was better. But they also, see, when I was looking at learning to fly, I did go past their school, but they were priced 2 or 3 times more than anybody else. And that had a lot to do with their aircraft. They were Robin 2160s, so they were a big canopy aeroplane. They were very spacious, but they had a bigger engine. They had an aerobatic airframe, so they were more costly to maintain and so on. They chewed more fuel, more oil, all that sort of stuff. But, obviously they were more expensive. So I couldn't afford there at the time. So, I was 16 when I started learning to fly. So I obviously couldn't. I was looking for a budget flight training. It's not something you want to look for, guys. Budget flight training. But I found a good school. They had a good product, and I love the Piper Tomahawk, so that's where I started. But certainly, when I was teaching later on, I appreciated the variance in quality of training that they were able to provide by virtue of those things we just discussed. So that's that. But we've introduced this product. All right, we've introduced this product now, backed by our experience in the digital industry, the mortgage industry. We're both real estate agents. We've both been around the block for a long time, and I'm going to have to hang up that phone, aren't I? Otherwise, it's going to annoy me as it rings. Sorry, guys. And the thing is, we're not priced more than our competitors. We absolutely 100% guarantee that our product, like I said, will fundamentally change your business, but the entry level, the cost is lower than what people are paying. It always has been. Our cost has always been lower than our competitors. We just haven't promoted ourselves in the same way. We don't push out those ridiculous. We don't push out the salesy Facebook ads. We certainly don't have long salesy webinars that try and coax people into a call. We just don't have that. We've never needed to, because we ourselves are a relationship-based business. Any time we advertise on Facebook, it's really only for brand awareness, because the influx of people we get into our business is always more than we've been able to manage. That is the case because we work so extensively with people one-on-one. We've provided enormous amounts of time to every person we've worked with. Part of the reason when we joined forces in November last year, you had just left Oracle. We sat down and I said, I don't know if I'm going to continue working with the mortgage industry, because we are sharing this space with absolute mediocrity. We're sharing this space with charlatans and thieves as far as I was concerned. Again, that was an objective opinion based on my experience with these products. I knew what they were doing, but they didn't know what they were doing. So I said, I'm going to continue working with big brands. We'd worked with Qantas and Virgin and Woolworths and all these really big brands, fantastic brands, that demand a really high level of perfection when it comes to how their business is represented. When it comes to how their business is represented in the digital space. And brokers tend to go for whatever's going to deliver them the most leads. So we sat down and decided to manufacture this digital marketing and social media platform based on the previous version of the platform. We've maintained a platform since 2007. We've always given our clients a means to interact with their data and such, but this is next level. So I guess after that really long rant, what does it do? Talk about it. Give me a break.
It was interesting. I was fascinated myself. There's some things there I actually didn't realise you'd been. The NMEA, we actually never spoke about that before.
The which one, sorry?
When you had been to NMEA. I actually wasn't aware of that, so I learned something myself just then.
Okay.
It's a digital marketing product. We talked about, you mentioned full stack, you mentioned it's integrated. We'll talk more about what that all means. But we're looking at a product which takes a lot of different products that people have been using throughout the industry, and they've been trying to stitch them together, and this has all those different functionalities built into the one product. So it will take care of your email marketing, it will take care of your landing pages, it will then tightly integrate that with your web page, which we consider an absolute critical part of your whole business and your marketing plan. We integrate that with Facebook and Google in the ad space, and we also, the monitoring of all the data that goes back and forth, it is very, very highly data-driven module that we put together. So when we've taken it, we've put it up into the cloud, we've made sure that all these different components talk together. So if someone comes in there into your web page or your ads or your email or your social media or your telecommunications, or the behaviour of what those people are interested in is captured. And from that we can form meaningful marketing statistics. We can create, we can actually target people very much based on what they're interested in seeing at that point in time. We can look at industry trends and see what's happening in the industry. And we can also adapt your web page and your marketing automatically in the background to match those trends. And it's something that you have control over. You can pick whether you want to follow those trends or whether you want a particular campaign for a specific interest. It might be just first-time buyers, you just want to do that. There might be a trend of investors building up, but you might just want to do that. But it does all that, it controls all that, it actually understands the behaviours of people and adapts. And we call it the chameleon effect on the website.
Yeah, the website itself is the chameleon of the website world. And look, you're Domenico's statistician, I guess. In fact, one of the reasons we've had such success in the Facebook space with audience generation is because Domenico was an architect providing support to this through the Australian Bureau of Statistics years and years ago. One of the very first things I had you do actually when you came on full time, finally, after asking you every day for 20 years, was you copied the relevant components of the ABS database into our local system here.
Yeah, there's the open data side of the ABS system, which is available, and we integrated into that and started bringing in some data so we can start using it. At the time, we were looking at the real estate side of things especially.
Yeah, it still remains actually more relevant to real estate agents. Certainly when we talk about Facebook and Facebook ads and Facebook targeting, we talk all the time about how the ads in eastern suburbs don't work like the ads in the western suburbs. You have to assess your demographics. It's one thing to test, and we do encourage people to relentlessly test their Facebook ads over and over and over and over, but you need a place upon which to start. Now, the starting point in Western Sydney is different to that in the southern end of the Macarthur, or certainly the Central Coast or the eastern suburbs and so on. Every area is regionally different. There's a different vernacular that applies for the purpose of language and so on. And that Australian Bureau of Statistics integration, like I said, while it applies more so to real estate agents, from a broker's perspective, it still allows really high-level assessment of the types of people you want to find and then target. So the statistical integration that you have provided, and I lost track of the number of tables and graphs and things like that, but there are hundreds of graphs, maybe over 1,000. In fact, I think the last time we counted it was about 1,400 graphs that provide indicators of different types of interactions on the website, and the table, or maybe the tables was about 1,400 or something. I don't remember, but it's extensive.
Graphs was a lot higher. The tables was down in the low hundreds, yeah.
Low hundreds.
Yeah.
Was it the every interaction and every action is recorded? A click on your website, a view on your website. The statistics on your website are extraordinary. They're obviously more in depth than what most high-end enterprise-level systems will provide. We record everything about a visit, all the geographical details, who people are, what they've subscribed to historically, which we'll come to when we talk about the landing pages, because a website is still the center of your marketing universe. It is still the most valuable marketing asset you have, and the interactions on your website have to be measured. Now, the data-driven aspect of that, if we see trends in first home buyers on a website, or industry trends at a higher level, but certainly trends on an individual's website, we can automatically change via our system the banner that they show on YouTube or Facebook to represent themselves in a way that the market expects of them. So if it's a first home buyer trend, we'll change it, or first home buyer banner and so on. That's what we mean by integrated. And I had to, again, introduce that chapter this morning because I use the term integrated a lot, but it is important to properly define that, I think. And that's what that means. So if it's the butterfly effect of the marketing world, something you do on YouTube might affect something that happens on Facebook. Something that happens on Wistia might impact upon something that happens in Twitter. All these things are interconnected, and you want them to operate, you want the system itself to operate autonomously in a way, if you want it to, so that data can speak to each other and make informed and educated AI-based or machine-based decisions based upon that data which we collect, which is extraordinary.
Yep. And it's and again, that multi-level aspect is what makes that really powerful. The fact that it starts at an individual level and goes to the website level and then just goes to general aggregated level across everything. So if a person arrives at the website and we don't know anything about them, then you'd use the website trend or the industry trend. But if someone arrives and we know a lot about that person because they've clicked on certain links within the email, or they've visited certain parts of your social media, or they've gone to your website and read certain blogs, then we know a lot more about that person, so it can be at that person level. So it adapts.
Yeah, it adapts. Like we said, it's a chameleon. And maybe I didn't properly describe that in terms of at the website level, because if somebody does click on first home buyer links, say 10 first home buyer links, or even 5 or 3, it doesn't really matter. In the first visit, we know nothing about them, so we learn a lot in those first half dozen clicks or so. But we change the content on the website to reflect their desired interest type. It's called conditional content. It's conditional behaviour. So if somebody's interested in investor information and they click on investor pages and the system decides that is what they're looking for, the system itself will start to show investor information. It will show investor videos on the front page. It will show investor-based lead magnets rather than anything else. Again, a lead magnet is a term we'll talk about later. So it's a really amazing system, highly integrated, highly efficient, highly automated, and it costs less than the BS experience provided by the general Facebook marketing experience, which is where we started when we went onto this rant. So we're particularly proud of it in what it does and the way in which it can help businesses. It's undergone a lot of testing over the last 3 or 4 months, and it works extraordinarily well. We're looking forward to people actually using it en masse. And part of the reason for that is the system itself learns from aggregated behaviours from multiple brokers and so on. If you're looking at this on video, and we keep looking at our microphones, it's because we're checking battery level. We've had nothing but problems with our tech over the last few days, and batteries maybe are at the top of that list. All right, so we've gone, we've ranted on about that long enough. And by the way, data-driven behavioural insights is like maybe the 5th chapter in the book, and it's well worth reading because it's the foundation upon which all digital marketing is based. And we do record data for everything, daily data, hourly data in a lot of cases, hourly data for Facebook ad statistics, which are all integrated and more effective, certainly, than the data presented from within Facebook itself. The YouTube information we have, the number of statistics, likes, comments, all that sort of stuff, is more comprehensive than what YouTube provides. Everything is more comprehensive than what the actual platform provides because we've taken the data and we've applied a statistical kind of broad analysis of the information we have, and we're able to integrate that with other systems. So it's really, really good. One of the features that you were working on last week was the integration of comments, for example. It's probably something we won't talk about this in this podcast because it's just outside the scope of, I guess, what we wanted to talk about. But things like integrating Facebook comments and YouTube comments and other types of comments and mentions on social medias, and then aggregating them into a single table so people can see. You don't want to go to half a dozen platforms every day to see where you've had some sort of interaction so you can then reply. What a waste of time. You want to see it all in one table.
That's nice. So for a glance, you can see all the comments that have been made across your social media and then reply to them from the platform if you need to. Yeah.
Again, that's just an indication of the full stack.
Hidden features.
It is. Well, it's hidden, but it's a good feature. The same applies for testimonials. We pull them in from Google My Business and Facebook and stuff and aggregate them into a single environment. So we can do interesting stuff. Once we've got them all, we can send them to websites. We can create images out of them, do all sorts of stuff. But that's hardly a primary system. Again, it's one of the, 120 or so modules that are there for people to play with if they want to use them. So, moving on, we've just described, this horrendously bad experience in the market. What a bad experience looks like. Do you want to talk about that? And the origins, perhaps? Even before that. No, you talk about that.
Oh, into origins, I'm trying to think, are we going back to mail mergers, then going into email marketing?
No, I'd say talk about what the typical landing experience entails now.
Oh, okay. There's not much to it. It sounds very simplistic. There's ads that are provided. People show an interest in the ads. They're directed to a page on your website, which we refer to as the landing page. And there's certain features of the landing page that it's pretty streamlined, void of any headers, sidebars, and that it just brings people in there and provides them the information on what drew them there in the first time. And from there, you then, depends if you're selling a product, it could be a long squeeze page, which some people will talk about that later, which are buy options on the page. If you're providing a product or a service, it could be to generate...
just the typical experience, man. They don't know what you're talking about. Honestly,
All right,
I'm getting lost.
You get to a landing
It draws
page.
people to a landing
Because I'm
page.
thinking
A page
all the-
free from distraction. It's free from
I'm thinking
distraction.
all the
Header,
options.
no header, no footer, no sidebar. It's just a product and a lead magnet. People subscribe and it sends them to a spam list.
Subscribe, man. That's even more basic than what I was going for.
Yeah, because that's the general experience, right?
Or the sale. So the subscribe or the sale.
All right. Now, going through that, let's talk first of all. Okay, the Facebook ads, I'm not going to get into it now because they're absolute shit house. The ads we're seeing in the industry are garbage. Absolute pure garbage. It doesn't represent a brand point of differentiation, point of difference, all that sort of stuff, unique selling point. That isn't there. In fact, we've lost the concept of what Facebook ads actually mean, and that is a promise. It's a brand promise.
Yeah. We should add, there are companies out there that do this extremely well. So look,
amazingly
we
well.
acknowledge there are some really top-notch companies out there. We're just talking more about the average
Yeah,
experience
brokers
and also within the
brokers
finance
don't use
industry.
them though. Brokers are drawn towards
yeah.
these Facebook marketers that promise lead generation and they provide that rubbish experience.
And
that
that's
you've
what we're
just
talking
described.
about here when we talk about this, yeah.
There are some truly exceptional companies out there. We have a lot of really good competitors. We're on really good terms with them. I think they recognise the expertise and we recognise theirs. So we're all very friendly. We go to the same seminars and workshops and stuff and give each other grief, but in a friendly way. We go out for beers afterwards, right? It's a different world.
That's what I thought I'd mention in case one of them sees this.
They're not pretending to be digital marketers. They're not pretending. They're not saying they've discovered the secret recipe for generating leads on tap, leads here, and they provide a real experience because there is a big, huge difference between a sales funnel and a marketing funnel. No one in the finance space actually provides a marketing funnel. In fact, they barely provide a sales funnel, and the sales funnel they provide is flawed. So, talk about. Let's not talk about the ads now because we can come to that later, maybe if we've got time. Talk about the mashup of third-party services because that's fascinating.
Yeah, that's interesting in itself. So this is where we were talking about a lot of companies, when they come in here, they'll go through and they'll just pick a series of different products and put them together. So they'll go through and pick a company that takes care of the landing pages. They'll pick a company that takes care of the email marketing aspect. Then they'll put another product they'll pick that will help maybe stitch them together. Might need a calendar on there, so they'll go and pick another product that brings a calendar in there. They might discover they need some videos, and so they'll bring in most likely YouTube there. And what it is you're paying for all these different products from all these different providers, and you're trying to bring them together. And a lot of the marketers, what they do is they know how to do that. They'll go in there and do that for you, but you could actually do that yourself. So they're not really providing anything that you couldn't do yourself. You're just paying for someone else and their time to do it. And the copyright's an important part, and that's worth making sure you get right. But it is that stitched experience between all these different products, and you don't get that integration and that data sharing that you could get if it had just one product when you do it that way. Yeah.
The copyright issue, it's interesting you mentioned that, and I'll mention it now because I know I'll forget later, is we did have 3 guys come to us who, another guy, I think he was a Brisbane-based Facebook marketer. I'm using double quotes there if you're listening on audio. I don't like to assign the term marketer to these people because it's a little bit, it diminishes the value of the actual title. And he provided this Google document or something on advertising on Facebook Marketplace. Now, first of all, 3 guys got a slap from ASIC, a slap on the wrist from ASIC, but one of them in particular was crucified by a photographer out there because this guy had inadvertently used, well, not inadvertently, deliberately, but he'd used one of their images off of Google image search. And I said, why in the hell did you go to Google Images to get an image of? It's easy to get an image license. If you want to use a Google Home and you find one, you call it the real estate agent, say, can I use it? Right, it really is that easy. And it's an introduction to the real estate agent that you're actually calling. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do. You can go to one of a dozen really good high-level royalty-free websites where you can get images of a home. You can get one that looks like a Queenslander if you're in Queensland. I think this guy was doing it for Toowoomba. No, Ipswich. It was Ipswich. And this guy ended up paying $14,000 in compensation to the guy he stole the image from. and he couldn't escape that. He was a professional. He used it in what was clearly self-promotion. Anyway, I said to this guy, why did you use an image that was sourced from Google Images? That's what it said to do in the document. So, guys, we've got some guidelines on advertising on Facebook Marketplace. Make sure you read that, all right? Any kind of advertising you do in any way, in any shape or form, is regulated. Doesn't matter what environment you use to represent yourself, it is regulated. And Facebook Marketplace is Facebook Marketplace. It sounded like I said something there.
I was trying to work that out.
It's just because I've had a long night. I'm sorry for all the children listening. Although there was one podcast we shot last week, I think, where I started screaming and shouting and swearing at the...
Oh, we hit a very sensitive topic that time, yeah.
Yeah, it might have been a client podcast. I tend to scream at people. But if you're advertising on Facebook Marketplace, you certainly have to be cautious of the regulatory oversight and certainly the conditions that apply, because it's easy to breach the law. So, yeah, read our guidelines on our website. But, yeah, I feel for that. And I've seen this Google document, or I think it was a Google document or a Word document. It was a document where people had to cut and paste, which in itself is inherently ridiculous. That's another thing we don't do in our system. There's no cutting and pasting. We know all these products out in the market. We know what they're doing. We've got them on our PCs. We've got full copies of them. Every guy that comes to us, not every guy obviously, but so many guys come to us, about, I don't know, 30% at the moment, have all come off another product. So they recognise the value of digital marketing, but they weren't happy with the product they've been provided, or they've come across someone we've worked with and made the comparison and said, oh crap, I paid money for this, and come to us and I forget where I was heading with that.
The amount of effort they'd have to put in just to get the same starting point.
Oh,
Yeah.
What takes other people?
Yeah.
What takes other people 4 weeks takes us 3 minutes.
Yep.
Once our system is set up.
There's a lot of automation built there to free up your time to concentrate on your business and have the marketing work for you there in the background.
So let's talk about the system. People use MailChimp. Okay. I've seen people...
Oh, naming them. Okay.
Sorry?
I was being very generic before by not naming them. But yeah, MailChimp,
look,
landing page.
There's 100.
Yeah.
If your marketing representation has introduced you to MailChimp, Lead Pages, ClickFunnels, Calendly, Zapier, any number of these services, then you've been introduced to a product that is less effective than the one we give away for free. Now, I have to be real clear on that. I'm going to say it over and over and over again because I don't want people paying for this crap ever again. We give away our free product periodically, sometimes via our Facebook group, sometimes via our email list. It's undergoing a major upgrade now. So I'm actually basing that now on the former growth product. So the growth product we're providing people for 5 years, basically, is now going to become our Uranus product. So it's been upgraded from its previous form, which itself was at least 3 times more valuable than the stuff people are charging for. Anyway, so they're using these products. I've seen people provide an hour-long video on how to copy MailChimp code from MailChimp into Lead Pages. Why on earth would you use Lead Pages or ClickFunnels when you have a website? Now, guys, this is where I start screaming and carrying along like a pork chop, right? All right, your website is the most valuable marketing asset. Okay, what I'm going to talk about now kind of has a few moving parts to it. First of all, traffic to your website can originate from any number of sources. People can come to a blog post, a page, a contact page, anything, anywhere, at any time, or a landing page, which we'll talk about again in a second. But the entry point to your website is virtually anywhere. So every page on your website is a potential organic entry point. Therefore, every single page on your website is a type of landing page, right? Therefore, every single page on your website needs to provide some sort of conversion opportunity, must provide some sort of conversion opportunity. I'll say that again. Every single page on your website is a potential organic entry point or paid entry point. Therefore, every single page on your website needs to provide some sort of conversion opportunity. Right? Every single page on your website is a type of landing page. It's not going to be as effective as your dedicated landing page, but it's a landing page nonetheless. Now, the fact that some people... Here I go. I'm sorry, guys. If you're watching this, I might black it out because I'm going to start spitting everywhere. Okay, the fact that some people send people to lead pages or ClickFunnels and disregard that website experience entirely is fucking criminal. All right, it is goddamn criminal, and it irritates the crap out of me when people have come to me after having paid $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, and there has been no effort at all in applying the digital effort to someone's website. Instead, they'll send them off to lead pages, which again is less effective than the product we give people for free. Do you know how much that irritates me? I think you do, because you're copying the spray.
I'm impressed how calm you did that.
Yeah, I know. It irritates the living crap out of me. It's heartbreaking to see brokers invest money into these products when they provide such a mediocre experience. We talked about Dunning-Kruger. On the other end...
Yeah, before you go there, we should probably say that part that you haven't seen there is this constant thing that you don't need a website anymore. And those comments that people come, look, you don't need a website, don't worry about it, you just the landing page is enough. And that just built into that frustration when there's a lot. Like, how many times have someone said, look, I've got this person here, why don't you go to this broker? And you might not know anything about that broker, so you just go to see their website. So you actually go to their website to find out something about them. And if the only thing you see is the landing page, what about all the other services?
Well, that's the thing you're not going to find. If someone's setting up their landing pages on lead pages, the only way people are going to arrive at that page is via paid promotion. The only way. All right? Or promotion on... You're sending people off-site. You're not sending people to your primary marketing asset. You're not sending people to your website. Now, here's the thing. With conditional content, we learn enormous amounts of stuff from a user's behaviour on your website. If they go to a landing page and then maybe visit a few other pages on your website, we know what they're doing. We know who they are. As soon as they subscribe to something, we know exactly who they are forevermore.
It's very valuable information.
They come back to your website 8 weeks later. We know who they are. If it's been 8 weeks, we can send web page triggers to them. We can unsubscribe them and resubscribe them to different lists. When someone subscribes to something, here's something to illustrate the value of conditional content. If someone subscribes to a first-time buyer form on your website, and they download it and come back a couple of days later, do we want to show them that same form again?
Oh, of course not. They've seen it already. Why would you keep showing it?
It doesn't matter if they've gone to a dedicated landing page or a primary page on your website or wherever else. As long as they've subscribed to that particular lead magnet, we do not want to show that to them again because it's a wasted opportunity. Right, so no, we show them something else. So we have what's called an escalation of commitment strategy, which applies through our website and through broadly, I guess, the marketing funnel experience. And we escalate people deeper into that marketing journey. The only way of doing that is to provide an escalation-based experience. You do not show something to them if they've already seen it. Certainly a subscription-based opportunity. And if someone subscribes to something, they escalate and we're able to treat them differently in a different way. We're able to curate and create an experience that...
And having the web page allows us to do that, and we provide the web page to people. We actually give a website. Yeah, website. We actually provide a full website.
Yeah, it's you don't have to use it, but you know, it's connected in a more efficient way. There's no learning curve there. And we also provide, builders and things, one-click creation of tools from the platform. And I guess it facilitates the article submission service we have, which we probably won't talk about this podcast. Maybe we'll see how we go with time.
Yeah. So I suppose we should head back to your story about Danny Kruger after we probably have a quick break there.
No, we'll keep Dunning Kruger. What were we talking about?
We're talking about landing pages. And we're going to go into landing Kruger.
All right. So, So, you want to hit stop, don't you?
Yep.
All right. We've just had to walk away and come back. Unfortunately, it's the middle of a workday here. We don't normally record these during the day. Most of the stuff we record is late at night, so there are only disruptions. But at the moment, we've got most of our phones diverting and emails are still coming through, and there are a couple of important calls that both of us have to take. So unfortunately, we've got our mobile phones here pointing back at us. And so it's an awkward thing having to record this through the day.
Yeah, I didn't think it'd be so disruptive, but you got to keep everything going at the same time.
No. We did try and record one the other day. It was a really hot day. In Sydney today, it's raining. It's quite cool. And the lights we have pointing at us aren't such a problem today. But last week when we recorded one, it was a nightmare. We had sweat dripping off us and all sorts of things. We couldn't have the air conditioning system running because, well, first of all, it got too cold too quick.
Yeah, it's right above us. So he went from super hot to super cold.
And the second one, I think it does. I think you do hear a little bit of it through the microphones. We probably need to test that.
I still think the denoise filter will fix that up. But anyway.
Yeah, you're talking about Adobe's.
Better not to have it.
These microphones themselves, they're very good. HBB flash mics, they don't make them anymore, but they are really, really good. The Sennheiser capsule, they block out virtually everything. It's why we have them so close to our mouths. Watch this. This is 1 foot away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 2 feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was an arm's length, that second one. I'd be interested to see what we hear off that.
I heard you clearly.
I hear more on there. All right. So I don't even know what we're talking about, but let's move on. I guess we were talking about the fractional nature of all the systems that are generally provided to not just the finance market, but this is any industry, man. It's like, there's, I don't think there's any industry on the planet that is represented by such a large population of clueless people than digital marketing. It attracts so many people. You see all these courses over 2 days. People expect to learn in 2 days what took us over 20 years. It's kind of crazy. You can have a really cursory understanding of it yourself quite quickly as a business owner with those elements that you need to know, but certainly the high-level stuff and understanding, like we said, the data-driven aspect of it takes certainly a lot longer, and you really do have to have a proprietary and full stack and fully hosted and one-click experience in order to. I don't know where I'm going with that.
Just the benefit, but just the benefit from the whole lot put together. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just. I lost my train of thought, and I was trying to remember where we left off before I had a look at my PC and replied to a couple of emails there.
We should get back to the. I always like hearing it. The first landing pages and the story and the history is always a good point to go back to and start.
Okay.
Stock and bonds, what I'm thinking of, but
no,
it goes even further back than that.
No, it goes way back than that. And I think you know the answer. At least I hope you know the answer. The first type of landing pages were, of course, that blank face, man. Were newspapers, full page.
That's the stock and
advertisement. No, it's not. You can't say stock and bonds wasn't until what?
48.
Not 48, was it?
1948.
1948, was it?
Yeah. It's just post the World War
II.
II.
Of course it was. Yeah, Merrill Lynch, 1948. Yep. 6,450 words. But no, they went, look, full page advertisements go back to like the 1800s.
Yep.
And a full page advertisement closer towards the front page of a newspaper was the first type of landing page. If people would land on that page, you'd have a conversion opportunity. People might remember back in the day, and there's certainly examples in our guide, where you'd send a self-addressed envelope to someone for some reason to get something. And, or you get an offer that was too good to refuse. You used to, send away some ridiculous form and they'd send you 5 cassette tapes for $1. Just $1. You didn't realise you were subscribing to, a new cassette tape every month for $50. But
encyclopedia salesmen were really good at that at the schools. I remember little kids. Look, it will give you this free book, and so the kids will take it home and get your parents. Look, I get this free book. This guy turns up, sell the whole Britannica cassette.
I did that as a kid, and that story again is in this guide.
Yeah.
Where as a kid, I saw this thing for a free book, gave you option of maybe 5, and I filled it out and sent it off. And of course, the encyclopedia salesperson dropped it off, hand delivered it to me at our house. And of course, he said, "Oh, your parents' home?" I couldn't accept this thing from some random stranger that came by in his Commodore at the time. And I was really young. I was maybe 8 or 9 or something.
That's when I did it too.
But that's the way they employed it. There's also the entire experience is nothing new. And that's why I said when we started AWE, we fell back on traditional marketing strategies and techniques that were being used long before the internet was a thing, and applied that in the digital space. And one of the first things we did is we went back and looked at ads like stock and bonds and everything else. We looked at all these old full-page broadsheet newspaper advertisements and everything else, and they worked, and they still work. That's the important thing to remember. Even in this day and age, we get advertising time on regional Channel 9 TV, for example, for $2 an ad, $3 an ad, $3 for a 30-second spot in the middle of the night. Now, that's not a lot of money to pay. You are reaching people. People do watch TV that late at night. You do reach the right people, maybe not the right time, not the ideal time, but you do reach people. There are guys we've got that are still putting ads on the back of buses. 20 years ago when we were into that sort of thing, we used to do skywriting and stuff. There are a multitude of different ways of reaching people, and some of them to this day remain as effective, if not more so, than some of the primary digital strategies that have been used. Of course, digital is, I believe, digital is always more effective than throwing money into a newspaper advertisement. I think you're always going to return more because you're able to curate that ad very regionally to a specific location, specific group of people, and so on. But certainly the broadsheet newspaper was the first, and the stock and bonds. Merrill Lynch, 1948. Was it 6,450 words or six? Is that how many words? 6,450?
I don't remember the exact number, but it was around the 6,400, yeah.
I think it was 6,450. Mm-hmm. And that story in itself is interesting. First of all, 6,450 words on a single page.
So it was crammed on, it was small, and you've got a reproduction of it in the actual booklet you were speaking before, which is
I do.
down below if you're on our website. Yeah.
And there's also a reproduction on our website, and you can also download the high-resolution PDF from our website of that ad, because to this day the information is fascinating. And it was the first time that type of ad had made its way into a mainstream publication. It was New York Times, and it represented, I think, 2 or 3% of Merrill Lynch's entire marketing budget.
Yeah, and they were hesitant. They did produce it in a regional newspaper first.
Yeah, tested
before to see how it will function.
Did really well.
Yeah,
and they published this thing reluctantly. They were super cautious about doing so, and it performed extremely well. Now, here's the thing: in the bottom right-hand corner, it's very unobtrusive. The call to action was send a self-addressed envelope to this location, and we'll send you what?
A reproduction of that exact ad.
A reproduction of the ad, and they were inundated with people requesting reproduction. It was that valuable. And that was kind of one of the first ads that produced real edutainment. It was educational advertising. You don't see much of that these days. That's the problem I have with these long-form ads. If you're going to do long-form, it has to be good. No one has the time or the inclination or the respect for these kind of long-form ads we're seeing these days on Facebook, which are just, first of all, almost all of them are non-compliant, right? 100% non-compliant.
In the finance industry space you're talking about.
In the finance industry space, in the way they're represented. I think we might talk about it later, but I think a lot of these ads are written in a specific way in order to circumvent the special ad category that applies in Facebook to housing, credit, or employment. And when you're involved in that space, you have to, your options are very limited. Of course, you can circumvent the restrictions by having a good ad and allowing Facebook to deliver it to an appropriate group of people. Facebook doesn't want your ads to do poorly because they want you to come back and spend more money. But I think that is why some of these guys are designing these ads in that particular way. We talk about them as Jack and Jill ads. Jack and Jill went up the hill, got a home loan, saved thousands of dollars, and they're really long and they're really, really bad. Now, as recently as last night, I saw 3 ads in a row that were identical. I took screenshots of them, so I thought it was just insane.
And to add to that, identical ads, but different people that weren't from the same person. Yeah.
Now, again, I mentioned before, your brand positioning, your point of differentiation, your sales positioning, and so on. And, I guess we've lost, and I started to say this before, I'm not sure if I finished, but yeah, advertisement is a promise. It's a brand promise. And your landing page experience, assuming you send someone to all landing pages, because there are options, one of them is a lead page or a canvas ad within Facebook, whatever that provides someone is a response to that promise, which again leads us on to this whole lead magnet thing. And let's just finish talking about the Merrill Lynch thing, because that's a real fascinating story. And Merrill Lynch saw overwhelming success. They were a small boutique agency at that stage, and it took them global. Now, Ogilvy, who wrote this is Ogilvy Mather, or Mather at the time, I don't remember, who were behind that specific campaign. It was Louis Engel that wrote that. He was 2 years into the advertising agency at the time they published that ad. So this big, direct response type of thing was a big risk for Merrill Lynch, and it's discussed in any number of books. You go out and read marketing literature, and this story tends to repeat itself over and over and over and over. And Louis Engel was a brilliant copywriter and a guy that took risks. Of course, later, David Ogilvy sort of inherited that direct response kind of long form strategy and developed it, and it evolved in a very serious way by virtue of his efforts, and he's become an advertising legend for that reason. We're talking about the other day. David Ogilvy died, I think, in 1996 or 98, perhaps. I don't recall, but it was just after the birth of the internet. And somebody like that, who grew up as one of the men of Wall Street, essentially, I would have liked to have heard from him and maybe got an appreciation of what he felt the internet had done to advertising, because it's done for advertising. McDonald's did for fine food. Facebook advertising, the ubiquitous nature of advertising now, and the way people can represent themselves in the digital space has completely crushed and obliterated the creative process. People are creating ads in 2 minutes. They're using generic ads, copy and paste ads. So coming from someone that was so invested in, that bewitched era, Darren putting up the
high creativity,
that kind of advertising, it'd be nice to hear. Not that it's possible, but it'd be nice to hear sort of Ogilvy's take on that.
Yeah, it was a good discussion we had about what he would think about it. What concepts would he come up with? What his views on what we're doing now? Any more innovative ideas he would have around how that would work even better than what it does now?
Yeah, there's a really good YouTube video actually. David Ogilvy made an appearance on David Letterman. You got to remember, as an advertising executive, he was kind of like a superhero. He's one of those guys that just had such an extraordinary impact. And Ogilvy and Mather published through the late 60s and early 70s a whole bunch of long-form advertisements that weren't that much different to how to create financial advertising. How to, what's it called? About the stock and bonds.
Stock and bonds.
Yeah, so he used that and leveraged that and created his own suite of, because I was just going to say, one of the long form ads that he wrote was how to create financial advertisements that sell. And again, that's republished, I think. I don't know why I'm looking over there at the lights. I'm looking in the direction of my computer, but I've got a copy of that on the website, and I think there's a copy within the guide itself. And you read through that, and conceptually, financial advertising hasn't changed. It's more restrictive, there are more guidelines, there's more compliance, but the concepts are identical. Now, the reason I like about this stock and bonds business is not necessarily because the ad is, for lack of a better word, exquisite. It's what happened next. They created this escalation of commitment. People became so familiar with the ad, they ran it for a considerable period of time. The next ad that ran would invite them to a colour presentation, a colour screen, projection thing presentation. Now think of the ease upon which we can deliver video now. The effort they had to go to get people into a room, get people out of their homes in New York or wherever else, out into the snow and cold and weather and all that sort of stuff, away from their kids. We can deliver a video now to someone in seconds.
And it's that follow on, it's that second contact, yeah.
Digital
and
itself.
they kept building that and building it, yeah.
Digital itself has just become so transformative in the way in which we can accomplish what took people months and months and months in the olden days. So when I talk about David Ogilvy and wondering what his take on digital marketing would be, he was certainly around for the early stages of that development. Never saw HD video, YouTube, anything like that, social media, at least in the form as we understand it now. Probably saw lots of crappy websites with animated GIFs and stuff. But I think he would have been suitably impressed upon in the way in which we can actually use the internet to leverage the deliverability and accessibility of the advertising. He'd be horrified by the ads. You know, I've got how to create financial marketing that sells, and a couple of other ads. I've got those personally signed by Ogilvy. Like he's a guy. I've got them protected behind plastic. I've got to put them up on these office walls, man, because they're brilliant. Did I ever tell this story about going to Los Angeles through the Ogilvy office? And
that was in another podcast, which actually we never put it online.
Didn't we?
No, so it's probably worth repeating now.
What I might do is cut a snippet out of that old podcast because it is a long story. But
let's just have it as its own little video.
Sorry, man?
Have it as its own little snippet video.
Yeah, a little snippet, which we've had to do for a bunch of like videos we record for different reasons. This will not be one of them, I don't think. So yeah, anyway, that's that. So moving on from that, so they had an escalation of commitment. There are a lot of ads that we've reproduced in the guide. One of them is they laughed when I sat down to play the piano, and learning to play the piano, the harmonica, in weeks or something, and there are a whole bunch of those old style ads again, which date back as late or as early, I should say, as 1920 or 1919 or something. And again, the same principles that were applied back then apply now. That sales funnel experience, that sales funnel experience is predicated upon AIDA, which itself is over 120 odd years now, at least as a concept, probably 100 years old as a funnel-shaped picture with the acronym applied to it. Attention, interest, desire, action. They're the 4 steps that apply in a traditional funnel. Attention, interest, desire, and action. What's the problem with the sales funnel?
Well, that applies to more of a single product. That model it still applies relevant to everything we do, but its basis was you walk along the street, it grabs your attention, you've got an interest in a product, you walk into the store, you get the desire, you purchase it, which is the action. Now, a lot of our stuff nowadays is services. It's a lot more multifaceted than that just simple approach.
That simple approach, still applies in a broad sense. Right, AIDA, we still get someone's attention and we're still looking for a transaction of some kind at the end. So in a linear sense, that still applies, but it's completely inappropriate to a marketing funnel, which is fundamentally different to a sales funnel. And again, the mortgage industry, certainly the finance industry, has never, ever, ever, ever been introduced to a marketing funnel. And it's one of the things that irritates me because everyone talks about the customer experience and the client journey and all that sort of stuff when no one provides it in any way other than, maybe some rubbish voice drops or an email experience. An email experience itself is not an escalation strategy. It puts someone on a mailing list. That's virtually all it does. But, of course, we've developed our own funnel-based approach. In our manual, there's a link to a copy of Salesmanship, which was published in 1904 by Frank Dukesmith. And Frank Dukesmith introduced the weighted model approach. Long before, by the way, everyone, these other clowns got recognition for AIDA as an acronym and certainly as a principle. So Frank Dukesmith, as far as we can tell and best we can tell, largely ignored by mainstream marketing education institutions, if you like, because everyone still talks about AIDA because it's relevant. As a transactional journey, it's entirely relevant, but Frank Dukesmith introduced attention, interest, desire, and conviction. But it's a weighted model on a set of scales. That makes more sense. He understood that, first of all, the AIDA model is not necessarily linear, and because AIDA is marked in a funnel, so A at the top, interest, desire, action, with each group narrowing down. So lots of people go in the top and few come out the bottom as a transaction. That is not how a digital transaction applies. Different interests are weighted differently, and those elements don't necessarily occur in that order. You're going to have to excuse my language. I'm just tired and grumpy. So that's where are we heading from there? You don't know, do you?
Sure, yeah.
No, because we're talking about the original sort of the sales funnel,
more the
origins,
history part of it, yeah.
And that's AIDA. Dukesmith is we've actually applied a very complex kind of myriad of our own marketing funnel, but it's based almost entirely upon Frank Dukesmith's model because and the difference between a sales funnel and a marketing funnel, Domenico, if you had to answer in one sentence, what would it be?
This is what we were debating the other day.
No, it's not a debate. It's fact, pure and simple, and that is a marketing funnel is a journey.
To me, when I think of sales funnels, I think, look, it's just a single product. You go through, you just purchase a single product. You go there, you walk into the shop, you get the product, you walk out. It ends.
It's a short-lived transaction.
When we're talking about a marketing funnel, you've got that whole aspect of the journey. So you're building up the interest. People, then you educate them along the way, especially if you're doing a service to the point where they're ready and you've qualified yourself as someone they want to deal with in the finance space.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a lot more steps, a lot more sides to it.
It's funny. A marketing funnel is different and by the way, a sales funnel is entirely appropriate in a e-commerce environment where somebody is going to a website and
Marketing
ends
cart.
up in a, making that transaction.
Shopping cart, I mean.
Yeah, put things into a shopping cart, then go through and hit the pay now button, all that sort of stuff. But they still employ very high-end conditional content. What we're doing is nothing unique in that respect. You go to Amazon and they'll always show you recommended products. They understand. They know what you've been looking at.
And they do it really well.
They do it really well. But it's just unusual to find that level of integration into websites provided in the finance space, because most brokers don't have fantastic websites because they're invested in other things. They don't have the time. Mortgage brokers work very, very hard. They work long hours now, especially post-Royal Commission, with expectations placed upon them and so on. It's becoming harder and harder to manage these components of your business on the periphery.
Yeah, Amazon, they do it so well. It is a marketing funnel. It's not a sales funnel, the way they do it with the suggestions and recommendations.
That's right.
It is full-on marketing. Yeah.
It is full-on marketing.
Yeah.
It is exceptional marketing in that it follows you around the place as well. They do really good retargeting. And that's a tip, by the way. If ever you go to an e-commerce-based store, not Amazon, but certainly some of these other places, and you put something into a cart and then vacate that experience, 3 or 4 hours later, perhaps a day later, you will be on a retarget list, and that product will be offered to you at 50% off. That happens all the time. All the time. Because, and again, that's kind of like, we talk about this landing page transactional experience in the typical marketing environment, that transaction that takes place in the finance environment for mortgage brokers and so on. That, what I've just described in terms of giving 50% off to people the following day, that happens all the time in the e-commerce space. It's something I don't like, because I think if you're going to provide a discount to people, you provide it to people.
Up front, yeah.
Up front and to everybody equally. Mm-hmm. You don't discriminate on those people that actually commit to your business now by way of a purchase.
It actually hinders the purchase too. If you've had that experience where you've seen, I haven't seen the 50% discount, you've been more lucky than I have been, but where you see a discount, then you're going to go about to purchase something, then you'll hold off seeing if it comes through or not.
My wife does online shopping all the time, way too much. way too much. But all my kids, especially through COVID, she's relied on e-commerce platforms to buy the kids' stuff and everything else. And I always tell her that, just stick it in your cart and abandon. And she saves ridiculous amounts of money. It's just the way it works, but that frustrates me. I don't like that. I think you should recognise and appreciate those people that commit to you in the first instance.
Well, in that case there, some other competitor might come along and have it on special, and so you might actually end up buying it somewhere else.
Those
so you can actually lose the
lists,
sale.
Those retarget lists, they're handled very different in our system as well. And it is worth talking about that just real quick, probably in 1 minute, because people can be put on retarget lists in our system via subscriptions, via SMS subscriptions, via our, an SMS alert subscription form, which we haven't talked about, certainly an email subscription form, via visiting a page, via downloading something, via an inbound telephone number, which is a telco system that we'll talk about shortly. There are any number of ways that people might be added to that list, but they're also taken off that list when they are no longer part of that group of people. So if someone escalates to a certain point, say from prospect to opportunity, you don't want to target opportunities in the same way that you target cold leads and maybe warmish kind of prospects. They're all treated very differently, but you don't want to continue to send those people all those salesy emails. You put them on an escalated list or a different list, some sort of list that will treat those people very differently. But the Facebook experience there is just integrated in a very serious way. It's kind of the point I was getting at. Now, we were talking about landing pages. That's where we started. Now, most people, by the way, put a lead magnet and by the way, if you're using lead pages or ClickFunnels, again, Dom mentioned before, I wanted to interrupt him. He said, he was talking about the typical experience, and he said, you'll put a landing page on your website with a lead magnet and a subscription form. The problem is that people aren't putting those landing pages on their website. That is just, again, I'm not going to scream this time, but your website is the most valuable marketing asset. You lose that transactional record. You can't integrate that experience, that subscription experience with your broader website experience if you're on lead pages. It's just absurd that this is still provided to brokers. God, I feel bad for them. But the point I was getting at is, and there's two elements to that. In fact, there are three if you include the landing page itself. By the way, before we get onto that, landing pages evolved into what? Do you remember?
Squeeze pages.
Squeeze pages.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that when in your rant you were going on. And do you remember them? Do you remember squeeze pages?
Oh, there's still lots of them around today. You go to them and it's just the same information repeated over and over in different ways. I always call them the accountant pages too, because it's like these people who need that immense amount of detail to make the decision. They're the only ones who are going to read down to the bottom.
Yeah, and then they've got the button every page scroll.
Yeah.
They're in the olden days, they used to be a lot more dishonest than they are today. There's more regulation about how businesses, particularly in the finance space, can represent themselves now. So squeeze pages become a very dodgy mechanism upon which to sell something. I don't recommend them in finance. It's just subscription experience and lead magnet, that's it. When you have to scroll down, all you're doing is providing testimonials, and you scroll down again, it's got a whole bunch of features and lists. You scroll down, it's got another 2 videos. You scroll down, it's got another testimonial video. You just go, it just becomes ultra salesy, and I don't like that. So even back in the day, in the late 90s, we weren't using squeeze pages. We never, I may have for one particular guy, I may have, because I just remember doing something, not liking it, but it was that long ago, I don't know anymore. But we, as a rule, didn't create squeeze pages. We'd always actively talk people against it. And in our experience, with the data we derived from the transactions back then, we determined that honest landing pages were just more effective than squeeze pages. Thankfully, though, people don't really use squeeze pages much anymore, at least in finance. Every now and again, you'll see some bozo that does. Normally financial planners.
Outside the finance space, definitely. When they're doing, again, that buy instantly on the spot, download a product.
Yeah.
You see a lot of them still.
Well, that's an
But
interesting...
people have woken up to them and become a bit cautious of them too now. Similar like the banner, they become a bit invisible to them, like the banner ads starting to disappear in the background of when people go through pages. So the squeeze pages, since people see them, they usually move on. It's
interesting you're talking about the buy now aspect of it, because when people come to your website, let's say you send someone to a landing page from Facebook or Google or LinkedIn or Twitter or elsewhere, they come to your website. A lot of people, especially in finance, are looking for answers right now, aren't they?
Yep.
They don't give a crap about your ebook or watching your silly video or anything like that, or your webinar. They just want someone to help them right now. You've come along at the right time. Now, this does happen because about a month ago now, you're outside looking for...
the sale, the outdoor sales. Yeah, and all I wanted was and this is one of the larger companies too that provided to come across and just give a quote on the installation of a sale. Could I find their phone number? So I Googled them, I got put onto a page, and I could not find a phone number. All they had on that page was information about it and a form to contact details. No,
they had
and there was a lot of questions there. It was like your name, address, what sort of sale you wanted. There was a number of questions on that page too. And all I wanted to do was just ring up someone and say, "Come over."
Yeah, it was absolutely bizarre, wasn't it?
And I stayed on the page looking for it.
And I said to you, teach them an e-commerce lesson and go elsewhere.
Yeah.
Not that they'd ever know. But you said, no, I'm on a mission now.
I'm curious now.
And it was a dark page as well. Do you remember that? It was a dark page,
Yeah.
which I don't like. I like white space. But yeah, that's the thing. When someone comes to a landing page, you really need to provide a phone number. Just for those people that want to contact you right now. And I was turning into a big button. Right, it makes it easy. Contact us now.
And that was the
no one's going to be offended by that.
Yeah, that was the other thing. So, like you said, have a button there, press the phone number.
Yep.
And when I did find the number, and I tried to click on it, it came up with all the plus signs in the middle of it, so I couldn't actually dial it. I had to go and edit the number.
Yeah, that's when you provide the ahref, so tell dot, and you don't want spaces in the number there. That's probably a little bit.
Anyhow,
yeah.
We're talking about make it easy. If someone's coming to you, you want to make it simple and easy for them to reach you. You don't want to put anything that hinders that path from them to you.
That's right. The point of a landing page, the single point of a landing page, or the primary purpose of a landing page, this is an interesting question because no one gets it right. The primary purpose of a landing page is what, Dom?
To hide the phone number. Sorry, I couldn't resist that.
To have someone contact you at that point,
make contact.
Not to have them put on an email subscription, an email autoresponder campaign or anything like that. It's to have them contact you. The subscription experience is a secondary experience. The lead magnet experience is the secondary component of that. If people click on the phone number, you should have mechanisms in place on your business end to make sure that you always subscribe that person to a particular list, you add them to your systems, and you do whatever else is necessary there. But you want to get them onto the telephone. Before I talk about that, I just want to make one point. The entire marketing funnel experience and sales funnel experience, in fact, but certainly the marketing funnel experience, is used to qualify the mortgage broker. Okay, you don't use this experience to qualify the client. Okay, never, ever, ever use this experience to qualify the client. It is always used to qualify the mortgage broker, right? So you're always asking. We see some people ask for qualifying questions in that marketing funnel flow, which is just ridiculous. It doesn't happen so much anymore because I've made such a big stinking fuss and everything else about the experience that these marketers are providing the end consumer. But you don't want to ask them what their income is. You don't want to ask them how much they want to borrow. You don't want to ask them how much the house is worth. You don't want to ask them, all those sorts of silly questions. Anything you ask above and beyond what is absolutely required is going to diminish conversions. Any keystroke above what is absolutely required will diminish keystroke to the point where when you've got a text box and you ask for someone's email, all right, if that first character you type is in uppercase, that can potentially, it's very slight, but it diminishes conversions.
As they try and backspace and
Backspace
change it to lower.
Look, that's the phone's fault. But you can force that to be lowercase.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? That's just...
And that's because some people don't understand the fact that the email is case insensitive. So they think it has to be in that
That's
case.
right. Of course it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But it does affect some people. Yeah.
It does. All you're looking for is first name and email. That's it. First name and email. Now, the stuff we've seen. We've taken screenshots of some of the most horrible experiences ever. All right? For example, we've seen them with people that post Calendly booking links into their first landing page. Now, that in itself is just the most utterly disgraceful thing to do, right? We talk about this whole experience as a dating experience. This first introduction, this landing page, is essentially a digital handshake, right? And then sticking a calendar on that same page is like asking for dalliance on the first date. What does dalliance mean?
I think I looked that up.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's a funny word to use, but it's the only eloquent or polite way of saying it. But if the other person proposes the dirty, by all means, fill your boots, go out and, fill your boots, whatever. But the point is that you don't want that landing page to hinder that transaction in any way. You want that name and email, that's all. Ideally, you want them to call you, but the name and email is a complete fallback. So, like I was saying, we've seen these horrible experiences. We don't want you to put big banners and large pictures. We certainly don't want to see an image background on your landing page. That is just absurd. I'm seeing more and more of that now.
Really bright coloured ones, yeah.
Yeah, really bright coloured ones, or the typical, mortgage broker ones where you've got a couple, guys shaking hand with the broker, or someone standing there with a picture of a little house in their hand, or you've got a family up on a hill jumping up in the air. They might be acceptable in other locations, but certainly not as a big background image because it's a distraction. Anything on the landing page that doesn't assist with that transactional experience is a distraction and will diminish upon your conversions. Simple as that. Now, I've given you grief just then about, this whole Calendly thing. First of all, Calendly is a non-compliant plugin. Everyone uses it. ASIC will never prosecute. I've talked to them about that at length. They'll never prosecute people based on these things. Some of these, less important infractions, it's something that's become an industry norm. So they'll probably change legislation to permit this stuff rather than have any cases actually make their way into court. But the point I'm making is we absolutely positively don't want a calendar on the very first page of your website. However,
we always want to give them the opportunity to make a booking, or contact in the way they feel most comfortable in doing.
That's right, because like I said, just in the way we've got the contact us button, some people want to call you and some people want to make a booking with you. But we do that in the most unobtrusive way. It's just a little checkbox. Yes, I'd like to make a booking. And that's all. You can customize that text. It can obviously say whatever the hell you want it to say, but it's just a little checkbox. You check that, and there are 3 fields that pop down, which is phone number, and then the second field is a select menu. You select the date, and that populates available times. When you provide the phone number there, what does the first field? Do you remember what does the first field say for the date?
ASAP.
It's at your earliest convenience, or text of your choosing.
Yeah, and that's important because if they just give the phone number and don't care what time you call them, you want to provide that opportunity to them. You don't want them to have to pick a time in that process unless they want to.
Providing that experience in 3 select menus on your front page of your landing page that's hidden via a simple checkbox. It's tiny. How are we able to do that? And why are we able to do that?
And that's because we integrate very heavily into the Microsoft suite, especially Outlook. So those times that appear are directly from your calendar. So it's integrated. If someone comes through and actually picks a time that they would like to make a booking with you.
You're lecturing, man.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
And Yeah, so if someone, the good thing about that is if someone picks a time and makes a booking, the next person that comes along, that's booked out. That's not going to appear again. So it's all done through your calendar. If you go through and you update the fact that you've got an appointment that afternoon, of course, that's no longer available.
Yeah. Yeah, but the point is it's completely unobtrusive. It's just it's an option that's provided on the first page. Now, what this does, by the way, having that little option there, having that little checkbox, has improved and increased upon our conversions by about 37%. That sounds ridiculous, right? It sounds ridiculous, but that's because we're not forcing it upon people, we're giving them the option. And those people that want to make a booking, make a booking. Now, once somebody subscribes to something, whether it be a phone number, just a basic email subscriber with a lead magnet, or a calendar booking, I think I said those all. I might have doubled up there, but there are obviously those three transactions that might take place. Why on earth would we send them to the second landing page? This is another thing that bothers me in the industry. It's one of those proprietary kind of, methods that we developed internally because we saw the value in it. But why would you send a calendar booking and an email subscriber to the very same page? That is just absurd. That is utterly stupid, absurd. Again, it's a debilitating limitation upon that experience. It's a roadblock. It's generic and boring and stupid. So what do?
Yeah, that second page is fully customizable and based on the actions in the first page.
It's a conditional experience. So subscribers go to one page. Phone subscribers optionally go to a second page, and then calendar subscribers go to a third page. And we can then use that second page, which is God's gift to marketers, right? That second page is God's gift to marketers. And we can then treat them appropriately in the funnel experience. Those that make a booking, I do like to provide a video there. Remember I said we never, ever, ever, ever try and qualify a client in the funnel experience, right? The marketing funnel experience. And that's just black and white. That is what happens. You never try and qualify them. You don't ask stupid questions. However, there's always a however, isn't there? We want, certainly, like I said, the whole experience is used for the client to qualify the broker. Now, there is one occasion where it's acceptable for the client to qualify themselves. Right, and how do we do that? And this is, by the way, by way of the calendar booking people usually on the redirect landing page. So those that make a calendar booking, what are we going to offer them? Or perhaps someone later on in the email sequence. It depends based on.
Yeah, so this is what we refer to as the Venus report, and we give them the opportunity to provide them a custom report that fits their circumstances or their financial circumstances. So we go through and do ask a series of questions, which then provides them a booklet talking about the loans and how the loans work and what will be most appropriate to them in that space.
Yeah. 17 compliance-related questions. Based on the questions answered, it will send them a PDF report fully customized. I actually phased out while you were saying that. I was thinking about something. So I'm not actually sure what you said. So if I'm doubling up here, I apologise. So it's 17 questions. They do contribute towards your compliance library, but at completion of that, we send them this PDF report directly via email, but it's also copied to the broker and synced to your OneDrive, and all those fancy pants things happen. But the first three questions are, in fact, how much are you looking at borrowing, how much deposit do you have, all that sort of stuff, because we do want to determine an LVR and such, so we can then provide them in this booklet where they're self-qualifying. It's for their benefit, not for the brokers. We make that really clear, so you can get the appropriate and relevant information and links and so on. So based on the LVR, for example, we put in a bunch of graphs, repayment style graphs based on the loan amount they provide and so on. So it's really quite informative and descriptive, and again, it's a point of differentiation. People get this and forward it on, they print it out. If you're looking, and the irony of this is they are actually qualifying, right, themselves for the broker, if there is such a thing, because that's a whole load of horse shit anyhow, because you don't qualify people online in any way, regardless of what information they provide. But anyway, I'm not even sure what I was getting at there, but they are going through that qualification process.
Yeah, and it's all optional. So if they want to do it, they provide it, and if they do, it just gives you another level of understanding of that person, and it gives our system a large understanding of their interest. So then we can adapt the pages if they do come back.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's the biggest deal. Actually, it's the conditional content or escalation strategy on the website. Once they complete that Venus report, it's a fairly definitive. I'm interested in first-time buying, investing, or refinancing, and so on. And we can then obviously tailor the website, the chameleon of the website world, and start delivering that information. So if they do come back, they get relevant information. Now, the same thing applies when someone downloads a lead magnet. We said before there's an escalation strategy on the form and all that sort of stuff, so we don't show the same lead magnet and all that sort of stuff all over again. But the important point I want to make here is when somebody submits that information, we do keep their name and phone number and other details, including their booking date and all that sort of stuff, in session, in a cookie, and in all sorts of places. So every time they visit a page, obviously we know who they are. We assign what's called a BMU ID to every individual that visits your website. Every single user that visits your website, regardless of who they are, gets assigned a BMU ID. We can then track that back to certain Facebook activity and Wistia activity, which is by way of email. We can track it to all sorts of things. We know exactly what a user is doing, so we're able to edge them into certain directions. But when they subscribe to that form, we get their email and phone number, and this is what I was getting at before. Now, that actually becomes important with our
Email and name at that point.
What did I say?
Email and phone number. The phone number is if they go on to do the appointment.
Oh, sorry, email and
name. So we get their name and email, yeah.
And possibly a phone number. You're right. Sorry, I misspoke. Now, they can come back to us. We mentioned this, I think, at the beginning of the podcast. I don't remember if it was today or yesterday we mentioned this for particular groups. But they can come back a month later, 2 months later. Right? If they fulfill certain criteria, we can then send them a text message or an email, depending on whether we have email or phone number and all that sort of stuff. But this is 8 weeks later. You don't want to do it straight away because it's creepy. Right? I read online just in a public forum, someone said, I went to a website the other day and then I got an email 20 minutes later. How were they able to do that? They were very concerned that how this company was able to do it because most people don't know it can be done. And that's because it outwardly appears as an invasive marketing tool to be used, and it kind of is. Now, the example we give over and over is Ashley Madison, where someone's on a married cheating website, people looking for a relationship on the side kind of thing. You can imagine some guy going to Ashley and Madison after having formally provided a phone number or something similar, and a text message is sent to his mobile phone that is in his wife's purse. She picks it up and reads the message, and it's all over Red Rover.
Which she'll regard as a good thing.
Sorry?
She'll regard it as a she knows about it.
She knows about it. Okay, but that's kind of not the point.
It's just, yeah.
So you do have to be cautious about how you use those kinds of tools. And we do, in a certain respect, force that kind of behaviour, I think. We put a minimum delay, I think, of 15 minutes, but even that's not a lot. You'd want to wait a day. If you're going to send someone an email, you might fire off the newsletter a day later or something, or send them an email a day later, or just happen to call them the day later. So I was just thinking about you because the day before they were just thinking about you. And again, that person is escalating themselves in the marketing funnel, and you need that human touch. You need that human contact sometimes in order to drag them into the pipeline, essentially.
Yeah, and it works in retrospect's probably the correct word there. If someone does come to your website and they don't subscribe or book in, so we don't know anything about them, we still assign the BMU ID in the background. And each time they come, we actually build an interest and understand what that person is looking for. And if at some point they do provide some information about who they are, we actually understand and still be able to build some data on that person, on a profile of what they were looking for and what they were interested in.
Yeah. In fact, if we don't know who they are, we assign them. Do you remember? We assign them not a dummy email address. It's actually a real email address as the BMU ID at BeliefMedia.info.
.info, yeah.
.info, which is just one of the rubbish Belief Media domains I guess we have. No one uses .info, so we thought we'd use it for that. And when we later identify that user, we globally change all occurrences of that particular email in the system.
And it just works out very valuable. Again, it comes back to this data modeling that we were speaking about at the very start.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, lead magnets, how do we create them?
Lead magnets, we've got a series of white label documents in the system. They're pre-designed booklets. You just go in there, you tell the system in the setup what your logos and your details are. And so the good thing about that, for press of a button, it sticks your logo, sticks your address, everything on that document. It becomes your lead magnet. For press of another button, you pick which one you want to use, you pick which form you want to use, and it's there.
Yeah, you know, I got sent an email last week from a guy that said, this was from obviously one of those marketing stooges, and he said, I'm going to send you a white label lead magnet if you give me a testimonial. And by the way, that's illegal. Consumer law in Australia prohibits the elicit of a positive testimonial, but he gave the conditions. He said, okay, make sure you do it on video in landscape mode, make sure you're in good light, make sure you say these things, and he mentioned 6 or 7 things. And he said, I'll send you this lead magnet, which is absolutely crooked behaviour. First of all, marketing guys should know better. Marketing guys should know better. I'm using air quotes again there because obviously he's a bit of a crook. Well, he's not a crook. I don't think he's just clueless. And I thought, gee, that's just part of our system. You know, white labelling, and by the way, there was a graphic designer went through and changed all of those. That was not done in an automated way. So we can feed as many documents as we want to the system as white label marketing material, and these people can white label, they can brand as much as they want or as little as they want. The reality is they will brand everything because as soon as it's labelled, it inserts into their version controlled document management system.
That's important, the version control part of it, especially dealing in the finance space.
Yeah, and why is it important? That's important.
Compliance.
Compliance.
We have to keep a track of everything that we put out, especially in anything to do with advertising. If someone complains, you can go back and show this is actually what was there.
Yeah, it's required by law. That's ignored, you know. That is ignored. Every single piece of marketing material, advertising material, anything that you put out as promotional material has to be archived. So we do that in any number of ways. We actually
do it across the system everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, we archive changing of Facebook banners and obviously, you know, the email system and stuff like that. But where else do we do it? Where's a good example? Because I can't think right now.
There's the ads, the banners, the documents, emails. If an email goes out and then it gets any wording is changed in any email marketing, the previous templates versions are kept.
Yeah. All the YouTube channels are archived, so changes to your channels and your playlists, which again is unheard of. In fact, we won't have time to talk about YouTube systems and social media because I just looked at my thing. We've been going for 2 hours. Yeah. Or thereabouts, in reality.
Time for another stop-start.
Okay. So
the version control, we do it anywhere we can do it. We'll capture it just for compliance reasons. And even in telecommunication system, our telco system, there's all your call recordings and that are kept too. And
voicemails and call logs and basically anything that passes through that system, which again is a system we haven't talked about. I just want to talk about like 30 seconds on lead magnets. Obviously, we've talked about the way in which it's generated to insert it into a landing page, which gets or into via a form that gets sent to your landing page. You obviously just select it from a select menu. It really is that easy. We mentioned earlier, if you want to create a landing page, you just select a form and a lead magnet. The lead magnet is selected via a form. The catch there is there has to be an image associated with it. So if we create white label marketing material, there'll always be a 3D, rendered image as part of that book. If you upload your own documents to the document management system, and at the moment we support zip files and PDFs, you will have to upload your own image as part of that. That's not a real big limitation. But again, it is version controlled because it is required by law. Okay.
And I'd like to emphasise there too, we keep talking about you pick your menu, you select your options. This is submitted to the website. So in the actual platform, you make the selection, the menu, you say submit, and it will update your website for you with that information. You don't need to go to your website and paste and copy other information in there to make it occur.
If people are using our default website, our turnkey website, it actually gets submitted as a drag and drop option within the Elementor plugin. So that form will be updated in real time. Or if they have 100 forms create 100 forms on the platform, 100 forms will be sent to the website. In reality, most people only have 15 forms, maybe, because and that sounds like a lot. But you have them for different categories because each form has a different automation mechanism associated with it. We talk about automation associated with a form. Okay, there's 35 points of automation. I'm going to go through them real quick, or at least the big 3 or 4. One of them is sending of leads to CRM systems, which a lot of people look for. Now, I hate. Right? I don't like leads and even prospects really going to CRM systems because, we deliver hundreds of leads, thousands of leads to brokers in a week sometimes. We have delivered 2,000 leads to a single broker in a day, right? And that was just because he was a pain in the ass broker, right? Who said, I need leads for all my... And I said, well, they're going to be... they're going to be busy. They're going to have to call up these people. And he didn't want to spend past a particular amount, which is something else I'll talk about in just a second. And you don't want to fill up your CRM with... CRM is a customer relationship manager. Right? It's not a lead relationship manager. It's not a prospect relationship manager. It's a customer relationship manager. So CRMs in the finance space should really be called an ORM, which is an opportunity relationship manager. It should be used primarily to manage active opportunities. An opportunity is very different to a prospect and lead. Lead is just a passive mailing list subscriber. It's a silly word, lead. It just is. Prospect implies two-way communication of some kind, that's back and forth, and opportunity is obviously someone that's maybe elevated to the fact find, human-based fact find, or that process where they're talking to a broker and actively pursuing a loan. They're very, very different. So we tend to send people through to Microsoft Planner as part of a PRM system, which itself is very extensive. Read the guide and understand that because it operates as a CRM. We see a lot of people, for example, pay for Sales Tracker so they can manage. And this is like guys with Connective that might have access to Mercury, and they might go out and pay for Sales Tracker. In fact, that's not a good example because there is an API that connects Mercury and Sales Tracker together. It's a horrible integration. It can't be relied upon. It's actually quite horrendously poor. Let's say Podium, okay? And I know people, again, that are with Podium and then go out and use Sales Tracker for their sort of lead management, prospect management and stuff like that. In cases like that, it might be appropriate. But the point is they don't need Sales Tracker in the first place because Microsoft Planner, a tool most people don't know they already have access to, by way of tasks.microsoft.com's kind of part of the big picture Teams environment, that becomes as usable and as feature rich really as that standard Kanban board within Sales Tracker. There's a guy we had recently that was with Finshaw, and even Finshaw pride themselves on their system. I don't know why, because it's not very good. Well, it's good, but certainly, when you've got Sales Tracker as a competitor, all these Infinity guys with Finshaw know that Sales Tracker is better and infinitely better. Appropriate. So, what was I saying? Yeah, when an Infinity guy goes out and gets Sales Tracker, there's a problem. When Infinity itself doesn't deal effectively with that kind of lead management flow. So yeah, tasks.microsoft.com, Microsoft Planner, it deals in buckets and plans. So a plan is like a workflow, and then a bucket is a stage. And you move tasks throughout that system. We've built a back end to support automation based on those where those tasks are moved and how they're moved and so on. It's not ideal, right? It will be straight out. It's not ideal, but for standard business management and lead management and prospect management, it performs the function rather flawlessly and I think exceptionally.
And it saves it cluttering up the CRM, which is the very first point you made.
Yeah.
So the lead gets placed into Microsoft Planner as a task in the stage, in a bucket, which will be the first stage of lead. And then from there, the person can make contact, move them along, and depending on what the outcomes are, depends on what bucket they end up in. And then once they become a prospect, they can be moved into another plan, and when they become an opportunity, they can get moved into the CRM.
In fact, the prospect can be part of the standard lead workflow, depending upon how it's used. And that's the thing, it can be used in any way. Now, there are tools out in the finance space at the moment that do nothing but provide a Kanban board style feature. And that's really all they do. And there was one in particular, I forget the name of it now, Broke or something. Anyway, it was they were charging $350 a month, again, for a tool that most people had access to and could be automated to provide certain features. But this guy out in the industry had this thing purposely built, and it was really quite bad. He reduced the price to $150 when Sales Tracker provided real competition. Because if you're going to provide a Kanban board for the finance space and not actually provide apply online integration, it's kind of worthless. It's pointless. You might as well, if you can, you should always stick with your aggregated provided CRM because it just provides an integrated product. You don't want to deal with Mercury or Podium and Sales Tracker, but having Planner as a place just to manage leads, just a place to store them, because a lead is a lead. Even leads, you don't send leads to Planner. Name and email-based lead, you don't send to Planner. But as someone, you mentioned before, as someone elevates to prospect, in almost all cases, someone that sends to Microsoft Planner will be a prospect. We're not going to put, if we're sending 2,000 leads a day to someone, we're not going to put in 2,000 tasks in Planner. Right? But those that make a booking or something else will probably go into Planner. Now, the threads, the email threads in Microsoft Planner, email threads. I'm not sure how I said that. I wasn't listening to myself, but certainly the comments, or the notes section in Microsoft Planner, email notes, integrates heavily with Microsoft Office 365, obviously. You can have checklists associated with tasks and so on. So it's a really good system. It's well worth looking into, and we obviously support it. Now, that came by way of my rant on integration, the form-based integration. That's how I got onto that. But it's just worth reading the guide. We go into a bit more detail, I think. SMSs, you can send SMSs. You send the number you want to send from and just type a message. That's different for, again, phone subscribers, calendar subscribers, and basic leads, although basic leads wouldn't have provided a phone number, so it's just different for the other two groups. There's an entire integrated SMS module I'll talk about in just a moment. Things like the first email we send people, it's split in the same way that... All right, we're back now after Domenico had a very serious coughing fit, and we were talking about the email that he sent to a user after subscription. Now, again, just like the landing page redirect that we apply, which is quite comprehensive. Again, that system is actually managed in the form automation, by the way. I'll come to talk about that in a second. But the email we send people is also conditional. You send subscribers one email. You send phone bookings a different email, and calendar subscribers a completely different email, of course. And all of those emails contain their own placeholders for different types of information because, again, you treat these people differently. Now, the first email, which is very much conditional, all right, it applies based on those three things. You can't send a single email if you want to. There is an option for that. We just don't recommend it. If you're a very high level...
highly don't recommend it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just why would you limit your ability to market effectively just because you're too lazy to write 2 emails? Remembering you can use these over and over and over and over again for different things. There's a default setting there, and you set out your defaults, and they just automatically populate each new form you create, and then you just modify them just a little bit as you need to. But yeah, those 3 emails are, again, a magnificent opportunity to convert based on that interaction. And then there is the second email. We never used to include this, by the way, until last year was the second email, because the second email is also a generic introduction via normally the business owner or something, where they check up on you, they provide certain information, and they introduce you to the autoresponder campaign that will invariably follow. And that's part of the email marketing system, a broad symphony framework, we call it. And the initial emails that have been sent are called, it's part of what we call a Sonata model, which is introduction, the development, the exposition, the recapitulation, and the code or cadence. There's 5 main sections. It's an educational module. We're sending people education-based stuff. We don't sell at all. We don't hype at all. We don't need to. If you provide really good education, the system and your market, your finance business will sell itself.
And this is where you're qualifying yourself to the client. So the client sees your expertise in that series of emails. Excuse me, and they see you as someone who they can go to, and you also build up trust as that goes forward. And it's important to mention, I think you touched upon it. That first email is almost 100% opened. The open rate on that is really, really high.
That's right. So the first and second email are highly important for that reasons. Remember, you were someone subscribed to a lead magnet. That first email will normally carry a link, again, which is fully tracked. It does a whole bunch of things on the back end. It subscribes people to different lists. It sends people text messages. It does all sorts of different things. Every action is recorded and acted upon. Every single action has some sort of potential response through the system. That's probably the easiest way of describing it. Anything a user does can potentially impact upon how they're treated by the system.
Yeah, we've got a scoring system in the background, an algorithm that runs, and it contributes to that at every point and every step.
Yeah, 2 actual terms we probably won't get into. We might have to create an entire podcast on the BMI, which is the BeliefMedia Index, and the MSI, which is the Marketing Selling Index based on LinkedIn Social Selling Index. They're 2 figures we use because we record more data than, I don't know if we record more data than LinkedIn because that's Microsoft and stuff, but we record data from everywhere. LinkedIn can't do that. We can, right? We get data from everywhere. We know what everyone's doing at all times. It's kind of creepy how,
yeah, it creeps us out.
Platform, it's scary. You can only imagine what Google's doing.
Oh yeah, and this is what makes me
your mobile phone and
yeah, and look, and that comes from the benefit of the fact that everything is integrated.
Yeah. Fully integrated, full stack. So that's how we're able to provide such an exceptional experience. And why you get better results? Well, part of the reason, there are probably 1,000 reasons why you get better results with us than you do anyone else. But yeah, that's just one reason. So those points of automation, you get like little tasks sent to Outlook. It's Outlook tasks are easy to confuse with tasks associated with Planner, and easy to confuse with tasks associated with, say, OneNote or something else. Like tasks is such a dumb word in the Microsoft environment. They haven't figured that out yet, have they?
Yeah, like you mentioned, they got it across 3 different products.
Yeah, they have. I think we're in October of 2020 at the moment. They are talking about calling tasks in Teams the to-do list. So I think they've got a new to-do application. They're changing things. They realise that their system makes no sense, so they're making those changes. And Planner itself, Microsoft Planner itself, is integrating heavily with Microsoft Teams now. So there's a lot happening in that space, and we're keeping pace with that because we don't want to. We certainly don't want to introduce features into our platform that Microsoft provides, because we do integrate with Microsoft, and you all have access to Microsoft products. So you should be using one product over any other. We kind of like our product to feed everything else, to kind of provide all the functionality and to act like this little engine in the background that just constantly turns over and constantly works in amazing ways to improve upon your marketing. But we don't want you to have to go back to it the same way you might go back to Microsoft Teams every couple of hours to do something. It's not that kind of system. So there's 35 points of automation. They're all listed in the book. I know so it manages the email marketing. Hang on, I'm reading the wrong index. This is the index to the book.
Yeah,
25
all those pages are purely the index.
There's a lot of good stuff in here. I'm just reading it as I go through. No, I'm not even going to find it, so I'm not even going to bother. Just go through the guide, and there's I think about 35 primary points of automation. It's very high level. Now, it's worth mentioning. I did mention the SMS module before. And I mentioned also it's integrated with Telstra because they're the only compliant platform in Australia to use. We worked through probably 30 SMS gateways before we landed on Telstra and determined very quickly advice from, via testing and advice from our legal team was just, you got to work with Telstra because, if you're working with the financial space, you have to work with Telstra. And they're exceptional. We've worked really closely with Telstra, in fact. They contacted us and wanted to hear some broker stories to include in their magazines and stuff. They had read our website, they'd heard back from some of our people and contacted us. I don't know if we ever did that, I don't remember. We've done a bunch of webinars.
Yeah, the developers contacted us and we're in this tight-knit group of future directions of the product and how it gets used.
Yeah, one of their very significant, they had this really big, we thought it was a big webinar thing that they were having, and if we hadn't have been there, there would be one participant. Remember that?
It was highly chosen, wasn't it?
No, I think they probably wanted more.
No, they definitely wanted more.
They wouldn't have contacted just us. I think they wanted 10 or 15, sort of 10 or 15 of their best developers. And we were the only ones that turned up. Us and some weird fella from Victoria. Anyway, that was good, but they're doing some really cool stuff with the Telstra system there. We support sending to individuals, to lists, to we're integrated with Microsoft, so to Microsoft Outlook contact lists, to what we call, you can set up your own groups of lists. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. And also, we've got an integrated telco system, which I'll get Dom to talk about in a minute. And as people call into your business, we will add those people to lists automatically, which become distribution lists. And that's relevant, I guess, if you have a specific telephone number that's assigned to first-time buyers or investors or whatever else, you can put them onto a specific list that can be used for the purpose of contact. And that's assuming they don't exist on any other list, and which would have been created by way of a email subscription or something similar. That's a little bit complex because we haven't introduced that system yet, but needless to say, the system is really comprehensive. Now, it supports MMS. Do you remember how voice drops work? And what are voice drops?
Voice drops is recording a bit of audio, which you then send out as an MMS to your clients. You can either do it through the browser or upload a file. In the browser, there's a record button. Hit the record if you've got a laptop or even a desktop, as long as you've got a microphone facility or a headset connected to it. Just record the message.
Records, so it sends images as well, or a combination of images and audio files. We don't really recommend voice drops, do we? Not because they're fairly invasive.
Yeah.
Not initially, anyway.
They're very highly, So you want to use them for a very specific person, get an urgent message out. We do use SMSs for birthdays. That's a good point. There's a birthday text messaging module that we won't talk about now. Yeah, but it exists there anyway. But if you need to get an urgent message out, or there's a particular group, let's say you know which clients are St. George or NAB or Westpac, and there's a particular occurrence or a product or a rate change or something that you do want to get out to those people, then it's appropriate to send it out in that way. Yeah, but you want to be very targeted and very specific on what that's used for, and minimal, absolutely minimal.
Yeah, there are times within the post-sonata, so in the second sequence of the symphony model. This is post the education component, so after 10 to 14 days maybe, there are some cases where it might be appropriate to send these people a message. If you have spoken to someone, so they've elevated to prospect, and you have spoken to them, again, there are times when you might send them a MMS. We like that being done through the system only because it's recorded for compliance-related purposes. If you've got a phone backup system where it records to the cloud, those voicemail messages and text messages and things are fine if you send them to a client on your phone, but why would you? Certainly if you want them to be automated, it has to be done through us. Now, you mentioned contacting people for rate cuts and things like that. Now, we support an RBA email program, RBA SMS program, and a newsletter program. Now, the RBA email, I might have to talk about this because I built this module, didn't I?
Yep.
The RBA email is the most important email you can send a client, right? Because they expect it, right? Well, it's you looked all funny there. When I said that to you, you waved your head a little bit from side to side.
I don't know if I'd use the word expected, but look, it's
one that
they welcome it. Definitely, it's an update. It's telling them what's happening with their loan.
That's the point. Okay, if there are changes to someone's loan, if they're going to pay more money or less money, first of all, if they're going to pay more money, you're obligated to call them. All right, it's digital only extends so far. You mentioned the MMS. If you've got 2,000 clients, MMS or SMS might be more appropriate, and say, I'll call you over time, we'll discuss this. If it's a refinance reasoning or whatever, there are reasons when you have to call people and you should be calling people. It's part of our Edge post-settlement system where we do force contact at certain times, but certainly every month you can't contact everyone to say, the rate's the same, or the rate here has gone down 0.1%. At those times it's more effective, obviously, to communicate to everyone all at once. So when I said it's expected, it really is, because people have one concern and one concern above all else, and that is what is my rate and what impact does it have upon my home loan? All right, they need to know these things. They don't want to be surprised when they get the next statement. All right, they want to know how much money they have to transfer into their account. All right, that's important. So you have to let people know. And we see all sorts of rubbish RBA emails around the place. Ours are very short. We use 3 paragraphs. We've tested these through, I believe, over 1 million emails. I don't know how many, but 1 million emails maybe. Actually, that's easy because some guys have client lists there of 30, 40,000 people, considering they've sent those people every month for the last 10 years or so. You're talking tens of millions of emails. We've seen the data and we know 3-paragraph emails work better than anything else. Again, this is one of those things that we've promoted through the industry, and it's become fairly ubiquitous in nature. People copy us because we're good, and we see a lot of people doing what we tend to advocate. So we've seen that take effect because no one cares. And again, Connective and AFG, and actually a lot of people are really bad at what they do here, because they will fill up their emails with clearance rates, employment statistics, all sorts of stuff. But that is not important. Okay, if it is, you send it in a different email. Okay, what people want to know now is, what is the rate, what's the decision, what impact does it have upon my loan? How is my lifestyle affected by this decision? Why are you sending me an email? Get to the point. And putting in clearance graphs and stuff is just dumb. Okay, because the RBA email is a conversion-based email. We want people to contact us by virtue of that. If you've got 1,200 people on your, let's say, base it on, actually I won't go into numbers because it's confusing, but there is always a percentage of people that are due to be spoken to in your list. That's what Edge post-settlement program is designed to do, but there are always a percentage of people there that we should be talking to every month as they maybe reach their, the clawback period expires or something. Again, Edge takes care of that, but there are these other people that we need to be contacting. And the RBA email serves a number of purposes. One of them is that. The second is, there's perception without awareness, right? People know you're there. They know you're they see you in their Facebook feed. They might see a website notification pop up somewhere. They might see you on Google My Business. They're going to see you in all these different locations. So when it comes time for their cousin or their friend or whatever else to contact a mortgage broker, they're going to turn around and say, well, I know someone.
And that's important. The fact that they know they can refer to an email or something that's there, or they actually remember the name because it's constantly coming through.
Yeah,
it makes a big difference.
And that is PWA, perception without awareness. There is a section in the book that talks about that. It also talks about the exposure effect and the omnipresence. And we introduce, when I was a mortgage broker, we used to have Wayne Pearce come and talk info notes. We used to pack 200, 250 people into a single room, which you can't do anymore. At least not for a while. And Wayne Pearce from, Pearce Advantage, I think, Wayne Pearce Advantage or something. But he was the captain of the Australian rugby league team, captain of the State of Origin Blues team, captain of the Bowen Tigers for a number of years. And he also coached all those, collective groups over different time periods. And we used to have him come in and talk about mindset and all sorts of things. And one of the things he used to talk about was the reticular activators in your brain. And that is, these activators, kind of tickle your brain. If you're exposed to something, or if you want to do well with something, you kind of have to tickle your brain and make yourself aware of it. And the example he gives is the Toyota Yaris story, where his daughter was buying a Toyota Yaris. He'd never seen one before. He didn't know what they were. He drove there, went for a test drive, and as he drove home, he saw half a dozen of them on the road. And he tells this story. I don't know if it's a legitimate story or not, because I've since heard a couple of other people tell a very similar story. But that does apply. I've seen that on the road myself.
I think that most people experience that. They're not aware of something until it's brought to their attention, especially cars. That's a good example. When they go to buy the cars, all of a sudden they realise how many of them are actually out there, and they didn't really pay much attention to it. Or even the colour of cars. If they buy an unusual colour, then all of a sudden that pops out, yet they stand out a lot as it was. Yeah.
That's why, and I use this, when I give these webinars lately and all sorts of stuff, I tell these groups of people, we've got 550, 600 pages or something of information in this booklet. Unless you're aware of something, you don't know it exists. So, we're giving your brain a serious tickle by providing you with this, because concepts here are concepts that you have never... You don't need to get that phone? Okay. That's Dom's phone ringing. These are concepts you've never heard of before. Once we introduce them to you, you will find yourself just seeing things in digital nature that you've never seen before. It's an extraordinary experience. We're going to open you up. We're going to broaden your minds. So we're very limited now in kind of the time we have to talk about all this stuff. I think we've kind of introduced everything we wanted to talk about, which is just kind of introducing the... other than telco, which we'll talk about in a second. But we did just want to introduce some really big, broad concepts, didn't we?
Yeah, we've got the email marketing part we talked about, landing pages. Just really telco, newsletters we touched upon.
Yeah, actually we didn't. But I will say, by the way...
some articles.
RBA SMSs, they are the most effective tool you will ever have and you'll ever use, because it's a very personal, direct message, particularly if rates go up or down. People want to know. And you can always finish it in a generic way. If you've got 1,000 clients, and we do have people with thousands and thousands of clients, it's very difficult to contact everyone. But you can include in that text message, would you like to have a chat about it? Question mark. That puts the onus on that other person, so you get a bunch of replies and you can call them back over time. Or, there are a whole bunch of different ways of doing that, but it converts really, really well. Better than email. Much better than email. I haven't got the stats in front of me, unfortunately, and I don't remember them offhand. You wouldn't, would you?
No.
No.
It's been a while since I looked at them.
Yeah, no, I generally look at them all the time, but I just remember the stats from the last sort of 3 or 4 months. It's generally, up to, 20 or 30 times more effective. Like, it's that significant. The open rate on emails is generally, it can be anywhere from 30 to 80%. So it's anywhere in there depending upon the urgency or the nature of it. Newsletters are a little bit lower and so on, but certainly text messages, the open rate is virtually 100%. Other than those that are rejected, it's 100%. So, okay, just moving on quickly. The
Article submissions, just very quickly.
Yeah, newsletters. Newsletter program we're doing at the moment once every quarter. We will move to once every month. And again, that's branded in your company name, all sorts of stuff. It can be automated, but we don't like automating newsletters. We'd rather you went in and wrote a custom email. Only takes 20 seconds.
Yeah, and when we say automation now is where the system just sends it out automatically for you without you reviewing it. So yeah, we prefer you actually review it and hit the button.
You need some control, don't you?
Yeah.
You need some control.
You need to know what's going out.
Yourself.
If someone rings you up and calls you up about it, you need to know that incident occurred.
I think it's really important to have at least your finger on the pulse.
Yep.
And going in and hitting the button yourself is a very easy task. It's like the RBA mail. I think, why would you automate that? If you can add at least a small custom message within the email yourself and then send it, and we prioritise those emails, by the way. Those ones where people go in and send it themselves, we prioritise those. So we actually send those kind of a little few minutes ahead of the others. So there are a couple of advantages that apply there for those people that invest more into their marketing. Article submission program, that's actually a big one because we haven't talked about the trust model. Okay.
30.
Yeah, 30 minutes. Okay, let me give a 5-minute rant on the whole marketing journey, right? We talk about, what the marketing journey, the marketing experience, the customer experience is meant to provide. Okay, and that is, we're meant to escalate people through the stages of commitment. So we call that an escalation of commitment. Again, that's a BeliefMedia term. We coined that from an aviation term, which isn't a very positive term. Actually, it's also applied in an economic sense, but again, that's generally related to economies when they escalate towards a negative outcome. So we've coined that in a different way because it was important. That's what a marketing funnel is. From a consumer perspective, so from an end user perspective, they want to know, like, trust us, right? They're going to move through those stages, know, like, and trust, right? For example, the email we send out that will have a link to this booklet, people kind of know us. They may not know us very well, but they'll know us better by way of the book. If they watch this podcast, they'll know us better again. They might not like us, but they won't need to necessarily. And that's why the Know, Like, Trust is one of those funny things where you can reorder those and skip one of those. A referral, for example. You might not know someone or like them, but you can go straight to trust because you've dealt with someone. Therefore, I'm going to deal with them as well. But generally, someone who's very cold, they go through Know, Like, Trust. Now, those three attributes also apply to SEO in the sense that we also apply EAT. So it's KLTEAT. 6 figures you'll see written through the guide because in an SEO sense, they're very, very significant. Know, Like, Trust. People move through that experience. When they trust us, they'll contact us. Or know us, they'll contact us. They'll get to trust us. Or they'll will become trustworthy. It's a funny journey, but certainly Google relies on Know, Like, Trust in a sense. We morph that in with EAT, which is expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. Google assigns a value to your web pages, your blog posts, your videos, everything on the basis of EAT. How much expertise do you have? How can we determine your authoritativeness? And how can you be trusted? And all of those things are determined upon, different things like your interaction on LinkedIn, the number of mentions in traditional news media, the number of people that actually visit that page or share that page, the uniqueness of a page, which is what we're getting at with the article submission stuff, and so on. So, do you want to talk about the mechanism first upon which the articles are actually submitted? Do you remember? It's probably been that long since you've looked at that module.
Oh, the articles are pretty much written in advance. They're all in there. All you need to do is go in their system and select the article that you want to submit to your site, and hit the submit button.
No. Yeah. That's how long it's been. All right, you just go through and you select categories. I want first-time buyer information, investor categories,
one step
car
off.
loans. You just select the categories, and we submit those articles on schedule. So we submit them whenever they're made available into the system. You select the category and the status, so draft or published, and we'll just submit them whenever they're made available. The more categories you submit, the more articles you'll get. But we don't like it because it's duplicate content. All right, there are ways in which to manage duplicate content. Google doesn't necessarily penalise you for duplicate content, but if that's all you're doing, so if all you have on your website is duplicate content, yeah, it's quite bad. Actually, it's no good. And they'll start to downgrade you, because how can you demonstrate your expertise, authoritativeness and trust if all you're doing is publishing our articles? And that can't be overstated. The value of those three attributes cannot be overstated. We have to think of Google as some guy sitting back on a couch, eating a packet of potato chips and with his laptop. Google has become really clever. It is a human being now, essentially. Their level of AI is out of control. They know what pages exhibit expertise, authoritativeness and trust. You don't fit that criteria and you're screwed. So when we submit an article to someone's website, that same article goes to 100 other websites, or 200 or 500 or 1,000. But what we do is we apply SEO best practice to that article. We apply a canonical URL, which means nothing unless you read the book. We provide attributions. We provide all sorts of things. So Google understands, yes, this is duplicate content, and no, they're not trying to game SEO, right? Because that's a real danger. For example, there's some 99 content there out in the market. They charge $100 a month, which is a lot of money. That's half of what, So their articles are excellent. Cannot fault them on their articles and the quality of their writing and their expertise in that arena. They are well and truly fantastic, but their article delivery system is flawed. Now, I would love to have those guys, for example, just join us and send their articles through us, because they're actually having a negative effect. I've seen this with my own clients, where my clients, the article distribution service is not one we've focused on over the years. And I've had my clients go off to 99 and say, oh, it's super, super careful. And their website rankings have just deteriorated in a seriously significant way because they haven't put in their own content. So all they've had is duplicate, and it's had a really adverse and negative effect. So I talk to people about this all the time. There was a time, probably over 8 weeks, where I mentioned it every single Friday. And every one of our weekly updates, I talked about it. But it was just largely ignored because people kept on doing it.
Now, this is your module. Did you end up putting in the change where every fourth article has to be written by themselves?
We spoke about it, but if that's going to be activated, it is there at the moment.
It is, okay.
And I may take it out. And the reason for that is because it means we're going to submit one article and never submit the second, because brokers don't have the time to create their own material. There are ways to mitigate that. We've got the social media management system, social media system. So we can send our social media content to our website. Right, it's not the ideal content by any means, but it does mean you can create a full featured blog post for WordPress using Instagram. All right, which is a bizarre comment.
About the whole social media integration, have we?
We're going to have to talk about that separately, I think.
Yeah, we'll do it.
We're going to have to introduce a whole podcast where all we do is just talk about social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's the best, yeah. And do we have time to talk about telco?
Yes.
So quickly, we do have telecommunications integrated into the system. It is an additional cost for that module, but it monitors all the call. It's got call logs in there. It does the call recordings. It does the voicemail. It can do redirections based on where the number's coming from, so the geographics parts of the numbers. You can have lists where if a phone number that comes in is on a particular list, it gets handled in a particular way, whether that gets directed to a certain broker if you're a large business with multiple brokers. We've got stats across everything to do with queuing and how long people are waiting, the number of calls taken. There's whole workflows in there. It's with the telco system, I should take a step back. It's a virtual PBX system. So it takes your copper-based PBX system and it puts it up into the cloud with the full workflow. So when the number comes in, you tell it whether you want it to go into an interactive voice recording menu, whether you want it to go into a call group where it rings a series of numbers simultaneously or goes sequentially through them. It can go into a queuing where it sits there in the queue. You can define how long it sits there for. If it's in there too long, and go to a voicemail system, and triggers along the way. So let's say someone calls you and you don't answer that call and it goes to voicemail. You can create a trigger on that so that they get sent an SMS or an email saying, I missed your call, I'll get back to you such and such in such and such a time.
It's a fantastic system. Remembering that the Australian PSTN, that's a public switch telephone network, an ISDN network, due to be retired September 2021. The AMCA might make alterations to that timeline, particularly since we've had COVID and it's affected our ability to basically strip the system and implement nationwide NBN services. But everybody will essentially be forced into a VoIP or voice over IP based product by, again, virtue of the ubiquitous nature now of NBN services. So it's going to happen whether you like it or not. We're going to have to migrate towards VoIP services. It's the way of the future. In fact, most telephony, even now, has some sort of voice component to it or VoIP service component to it somewhere along the equation. You know, even if it's from a telephone tower to the primary exchange or something like that, it's represented somewhere. So it's a fantastic system. We support 1300 numbers, 1800 numbers, 13 numbers, geographic numbers, virtual mobile numbers, the lot. Look, the advantage there is you can have geographic numbers in different states of Australia. You can represent yourself in Queensland and Melbourne, despite having no physical presence there. That's if you're a Sydney-based business, for example, or WA or New York. Or Afghanistan. The numbers you can have are sourced from anywhere. We provide those. Maybe not Afghanistan, but you get the point. You can have that telco presence anywhere, and people can call in for a fixed fee. And in most cases, this entire system we've just described, with all the menus, the voice recordings, the internal MPBX features, transferring calls, all those sorts of things, costs less than a single mobile phone subscription in many cases. If you've got certainly less. My wife went out and got an iPhone, like whatever it is, 12, and the cost of that thing is extraordinary, like with the data and all that sort of stuff. And the MPBX well and truly comes in under something like that. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, it's less than even a moderately priced mobile phone subscription. It's very, very affordable and extremely powerful. So guys, look, I think we have to roll this up.
Yep.
We have to finish up only because we've run out of room on our microphones. And we've had nothing but problems with microphones running out and audio
locking up
and causing us all sorts of grief. So we're gonna finish up there. But look, this podcast really was just produced for the purpose of broad kind of marketing. A broad marketing introduction, certainly to our product and the way in which we operate and our underlying ideology and maybe digital philosophies and so on. If you are interested, again, our digital marketing guide, I think we call it the definitive guide to digital marketing in the finance space or something similar. I should really learn the title. But it is quite long, 550 pages, and we promise it'll have a positive impact upon your business. It will have a seriously positive impact upon the way in which you conduct your finance business and the way in which you implement digital as part of that. We will be back for lots of podcasts in the future. We're going to have to continue this one, in fact, just because we haven't introduced social media and stuff like that. We integrate with Twitter and LinkedIn, Google My Business,
There'll be more
Flickr,
podcasts.
YouTube.
We'll go into a lot more detail in the other podcasts and the different sections of the system.
Yeah. So if you'd like to make contact with us, 1300-BELIEF, that's 1300-235-433. That number again is 1300-235-433. You can visit us at www.BeliefMedia.com.au. And whether you're interested in our service or not, you're quite welcome to call. We'd rather offered you advice and had you, we'd rather you made decisions on the basis of good advice. Rather than, making bad decisions
Or guesswork based on
or
the little
guesswork
bit
that
you've
may
seen,
potentially
yeah.
impact in a negative way upon your everyday business. So if you need us for advice, we don't care if you're a client or not. Just give us a call, and we're happy to point you in the right direction. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. We've tired ourselves out and really have a nap. No, but we've enjoyed it, and you can expect our second one probably within 24 hours.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.